Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of What If Deku Was a 1,000-Year-Old Shapeshifter? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. Izuku is never born. He just wakes up one day. It's spring, and the sun is high overhead. Flowers are beginning to poke out of the ground, and the trees are shaking off the last of the winter cold. The year is 1030 AD. Izuku wakes with a start, sitting up from the bed of leaves and dirt that coats the forest floor. His knees are barely covered by a simple gray tunic, secured around his waist by a belt, but aside from that, he's wearing nothing. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know why he's there. He doesn't know where he's come from, or who his family is, or where he lives. All he knows is that his name is Izuku Midoriya. He stands up, and his vision swims for a moment. When it clears, he looks around. He's in a forest, pine trees scattered around him. The trunks seem to hum with energy, faint wisps of light dancing through the branches. He reaches up to touch them, and gasps as the light curls around his hand almost affectionately. A twig snaps behind him. He turns to find a small fox, staring up at him with muted curiosity. Something pushes him to reach out slowly, crouching down as he invites the fox to come closer. The creature glows with that same hum of life as the trees, but louder, more rhythmical, almost like a heartbeat. When the fox pushes its nose gently against Izuku's hand, he feels something brush against his mind. That's the only way to describe it. Something foreign, a dim consciousness, pushing against his own. With a start, he realizes it's coming from the fox. He's not entirely sure what he is, but he's pretty certain the world wasn't like this, so vibrant and glowing with light, before. Before? He shakes his head. He doesn't remember anything from before he woke up. But still, there's this niggling sensation. The fox whines softly, and Izuku buries his hand in the soft fur on its back. They stay like that for a while, in silent companionship, before the fox raises its head, stands up, and trots off happily into the trees. Izuku watches it leave until he can't feel the gentle push of its thoughts against his anymore. He stands up and looks around again, and as he feels the life of everything in the forest thriving around him, he feels an inescapable, unstoppable urge to protect it. That's his purpose. The knowledge slots into place in his mind like a jigsaw piece. He wanders for a while, following the path of a little river until he leaves the forest. In the distance, he can see soft plumes of smoke and thatched houses. With nowhere else to go, he decides to head towards the village. Despite the view, the walk takes him a few more hours, and his feet are beginning to feel sore by the time he reaches the village gates. He's hungry and sort of about to pass out, and desperately hoping he's somewhere that speaks the same language as him. A sentinel peers through the gates. "Who are you?" Izuku falters. "Just a traveler. I just need somewhere to rest." The guard looks skeptical. "Yeah. Got any money on you?" That's something Izuku forgot about. He fumbles through his pockets, expecting to find them empty, but his hand discovers a few coins, although he doesn't know how they got there. He shows them to the guard, and the man sighs, pulling the latch on the gates to open them. "All right then. Don't cause any trouble. Don't stay too long." Izuku bows hurriedly, mumbling his thanks. The guard just huffs, and shuts the gates behind him. The village is empty, but not uncannily so. Dim lights glow in all the windows, and when Izuku reaches the tavern, he finds it bustling with people. The abundance of life here is almost overwhelming. He can feel each individual heartbeat, each individual consciousness, and he has to take a few moments to process it all and filter it out before he can push open the tavern door. He makes his way to the bar, and a lady greets him. She seems about middle-aged, rosy-cheeked and warm. She asks him if he wants a drink. No, thanks," Izuku stutters. "Just a place to rest, if you have one. And maybe some food." He pushes the coins from his pocket across the bar. The woman collects the money in a leather pouch and leads him upstairs to a small room with a bed and a desk. He thanks her profusely, and 5 minutes later, there's a knock on his door, which he opens to find a steaming bowl of stew. That night, Izuku sleeps fitfully. His dreams are haunted by people whose names he doesn't know and whose faces he doesn't recognize, green hair and blonde hair, and screams in voices he feels like he should know. He wakes up the next morning in a cold sweat. When he stumbles downstairs to the tavern, there's a plate of bread and soup waiting for him. He takes it gratefully, eating in silence in the corner of the room. The door of the tavern swings open, and 3 men enter, laughing raucously. Some instinct inside Izuku warns him of their violence and anger, but he doesn't know how it knows that so certainly. He just senses that something is off. One of them, a broad man with matted brown hair, catches sight of him and whispers to the others. He tenses as they make their way over to his corner. Brown hair shoves his face right up to Izuku's, and he can smell the alcohol on his breath. "A new kid, huh? Where'd you come from?" Izuku tries to regulate his breathing. "I'm just passing through," he explains as calmly as he can. The man grabs the front of Izuku's tunic. "That doesn't answer my question," he growls. "Oh, I just came from Dash." "Doesn't matter." The other 2 snicker. "The point is not here. This is our place. We don't want weak, pathetic children like you." Izuku decides it's time to go. He stands up, immediately trying to back away, but one of brown hair's goons grabs his arm. He feels panic beginning to rise in his throat as he squirms against the man's grip. Brown hair hits him in the jaw. When Izuku stumbles back, he gets a kick in the stomach. He distantly notices the lady who took him to his room yesterday watching from the back door, looking pained. He silently begs her to help as he feels another punch break a rib, but she doesn't move. He's not really thinking anymore. All he can process is pain and panic, and the adrenaline running through him feels like it's about to burst in his veins. His vision starts to black out. No, he thinks, not like this. Not now. Desperation claws at his insides. Suddenly, a switch flicks in the back of his mind, something he hadn't even noticed was there beforehand, but now wonders how he didn't see earlier. Something changes. The world gets slightly bigger. His senses sharpen, and the humming energy of the life around him gets even louder, matching the rhythm of his own racing heart. He opens his mouth to speak, and a low growl comes out. The men's eyes widen, and brown hair steps back. "Demon," he breathes. "Demon." The woman, still watching from the corner, looks conflicted. Her face is painted in fear, but the corners of her mouth quirk upward in the tiniest smile. Izuku's head snaps to the side as he hears the building begin to wake up at the man's shouts. He doesn't need to hear any more. He turns and sprints out the door, for legs carrying him far faster than 2 ever could. When he reaches the gates, the guard is asleep. He'll wake up the moment the people chasing Izuku get close enough to be heard, but Izuku isn't planning to wait around to let him take any action. He's running entirely on instinct now, conscious logical thought pushed entirely to the back of his mind. He pushes himself to run even faster as he approaches the gates, before taking one final leap into the air, flicking that switch in his brain again, and breathing a sigh of relief as his body is caught by a pair of wings. Distantly, he wonders how he knew to do that. Presently, he decides he doesn't care. The air currents carry him effortlessly over the gates, and he leaves the village behind. One day, Izuku returns a favor. He's in the center of Amsterdam, perched lazily on the roof of a beautiful red brick building, when Aizawa rings him. He sighs when he sees the caller ID, but answers the call. "Izuku, I have a job for you." The man really doesn't waste a second. Izuku almost giggles. "Is it interesting?" There's a moment of hesitation on the other end of the phone, which is all Izuku needs to answer his question. "Then no. I'm taking a break, I told you. No work. I'm sightseeing. You haven't even let me tell you what it is yet. Will you not at least hear me out?" "No thanks. I'm your boss, Izuku." Izuku pouts. I thought we were friends." Aizawa is his boss, technically. He runs the underground agency that gives Izuku work and pays him a salary. In practicality, it's a bit difficult to order a 1,000-year-old god around unless you're making them do something they wanted to do anyway. Even more so when that 1,000-year-old god also happens to be a small, slightly cheeky teenage boy. Fortunately, Aizawa is used to dealing with this particular teenage boy. He's still not entirely sure what exactly he is, although Izuku has tried to explain it to him several times before. All he really understands is that the human boy he finds lurking in his office every so often is only human when he wants to be, which isn't particularly often, and that even though it's been about 20 years since the two of them met, Izuku hasn't aged a day. Still, as strange and supernatural as Izuku apparently is, Aizawa has his ways of getting him to do things. If you won't do it out of the kindness of your heart, at least do it because you owe me a favor. Izuku groans. As much as he hates to admit it, he does owe Aizawa a favor. How irritating. The agency has your next job lined up. Izuku tilts his head. Oh. Aizawa pauses. You're not going to like it. At Izuku's narrowed eyes, he continues. This isn't coming from me. It's straight from the higher-ups. You're stalling. What is it? It's an assassination. Izuku blinks once, and when he opens his eyes again they've turned a sharp yellow. It would be unsettling if Aizawa wasn't used to it happening every time Izuku got even slightly emotional. No. I can't dash. I said no. That was the one condition when I agreed to work for you. The only condition. I won't kill anyone. Can you not just make one exception? It's not that simple. I can't. My whole purpose is to protect life. Me killing someone would be like trying to push the same pole on two magnets together. It can be done with enough force, but it shouldn't. I feel deaths. It would put me in a lot of pain to be the cause of one. Aizawa drops his gaze. Of all the jobs, this isn't one Izuku can just refuse without having a lot of powerful people angry at him, and it's definitely not in his power to give the job to someone else. But, expression softening, Izuku's eyes return to their normal green. I'm sorry to put this on you. I know what the commission are like. But you need to get me out of this. Please. Aizawa internally slams his head against a wall. Fine. I'll see what I can do. But you owe me a big favor, problem child. Izuku giggles. I'm older than you. Tell me that with a straight face, and I'll believe you. The job turns out to be nothing like anything Izuku's done before. Aizawa tells him about the new program the commission has put him in charge of, an experimental thing they want to test out before they expand it. They want teams of 2 agents that they can send out to do undercover work. Mostly stealing information, bodyguard work, etc. Quick things. They want people who can get in and out of places unnoticed, and stay alive to keep doing it again and again. They're handpicking suitable people out of various military training programs and sending them to a new base in the country where they can live in between jobs. It's completely top secret. So where do I come in? Izuku asks. Like I said, it's in testing stages at the moment. They mostly want agents who are already trained and who'll make the program look successful from the get-go. Quite a few people are hoping to make money out of this, so they're desperate for it to get picked up as an official undercover operation. Well, with your, skill set, nobody will be better at the kind of things they want their operatives to do than you. The nature of Izuku's skill set goes unsaid. They both know undercover work is a breeze for someone who can stop appearing human at the drop of a hat. But you want to pair me with someone. Is that really a good idea? He doesn't have any objection to working with someone else, per se, but he knows people struggle to get along with him. He's completely aware that most of the time he's weird, freaky, and slightly inhuman. It sort of comes with the job. Of course not. Izuku waits for Aizawa to continue, but he doesn't. Great, he says, voice dripping with sarcasm. You're not going to take no for an answer, are you? Nope. Get your sightseeing over and done with ASAP. I'll see you in my office tomorrow morning. Izuku grumbles to nobody in particular as Aizawa hangs up. He slips the phone into his pocket, shakes his muscles loose, and pitches. Head first off the roof of the building he's crouched on, wings catching on the warm air currents as he loses his human form. Izuku meets the bleeding man by accident. He's hanging around some forest in the middle of Canada, bouncing between 4 legs and wings and enjoying the cold as he allows the glow of the life around him to give him energy. He comes here every so often to take breaks, in between rounds of dealing with human society. It's secluded, difficult for humans to survive in, and bristling with vibrant pine trees that protect the creatures living under them. It's almost enough to feel like home. He's nearing the edge of the forest, where it turns into more barren, rocky land, when he feels a conscious mind somewhere near him. It's human. Animal minds are recognizable, blurrier, murkier, less sharp than Izuku's own. When Izuku reaches out with his thoughts to touch theirs, they don't quite respond with clarity. This one is different. When Izuku's mind brushes it gently, it recoils, the thrumming rhythm of its thoughts getting faster. Human minds react like that. There's a person in Izuku's forest. He finds the man quickly, padding silently behind him as a fox as he drags himself past a line of trees into a clearing. He's bleeding badly, drops of red liquid trailing behind him as he stumbles forward. When he slides down with his back to a large boulder, clutching his wounded side and breathing shallowly, Izuku returns to human form behind him. The man's head turns instantly, eyes widening as he catches sight of a small boy in an oversized hoodie who definitely should not be wandering around in some freezing cold, secluded forest in the middle of nowhere. Izuku crouches down, making himself look as non-threatening as he can. "Let me help." He's aware he hasn't spoken in a while, and his voice sounds slightly foreign, inhuman, but it's better than nothing. The man flinches. He doesn't look much older than Izuku's human form, in his mid-20s at the latest. "Who are you?" Izuku ignores his question, stepping closer. "You're bleeding. Let me help." He takes off his hoodie in one quick movement and rips a strip of fabric from his shirt. The man doesn't resist as Izuku moves his hand from where it's pressed tightly against his injury. Izuku almost cringes. There's a messy bullet wound in the man's lower torso. It doesn't look like the bullet hit any vital organs, but blood is pooling on the snow where the man is sat, and he's looking more and more pale by the second. Izuku wraps the strip of fabric around the man's waist, stopping the blood flow as best as he can and securing it with a tight knot. "I don't have anything to clean it with. We'll have to get you to a hospital. Were you here with anyone?" The man hesitates, but Izuku insists. "I need to know. They probably have some kind of first aid on them. It might save your life if they're closer than the nearest hospital." The man's voice is barely above a whisper. "A group of us. On a mission out here. Got ambushed. Separated. I think they went east." That's all Izuku needs to know. He wraps his hoodie around the man, figuring he needs the warmth more than Izuku does, and steps back. "I'm going to find them. Stay here. Don't move. I'll come back." "You won't find them. This place is too big," the man breathes, almost panicked. "What's your name?" Izuku asks. "Aizawa. Shoyuta Aizawa." Izuku crouches down again until he's at the man's level. The man's eyes widen as they're met with yellow irises, not the green that Izuku's eyes had been before. "Aizawa. My name is Izuku. I will find them and I will come back. I swear it." With that, he gets up and turns away. Aizawa watches his back. Then he blinks, and Izuku is not there anymore. The sun is beginning to set, but from the sky it doesn't take Izuku long to find the people Aizawa had been traveling with. There's 4 of them, all looking battered and bruised but none nearly as injured as Aizawa is. Izuku lands a decent distance away from them, covering the rest of the way on 4 legs before resuming his human form as he runs into the clearing that they're sat in. Their murmured conversation pauses as they all jump to face him. Before Izuku can even react, one of them has a knife to his throat. His eyes are wild, his face disheveled and his blonde hair messy. "What did you do to Aizawa, you little dash?" Izuku grabs the man's wrist, twisting it until he's forced to drop the knife and ducking out of the headlock. He leaps backwards before anyone else can jump at him, his hands raised in the air in surrender. "I'm not with the people who attacked you. I found your friend. He needs medical help." They all pause, but they still look suspicious. The blonde grabs Izuku's shoulder. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" "That doesn't matter right now. Your friend is injured. He's bleeding out in a clearing a few miles from here. You have to trust me." One of the others speaks up. "Why should we?" "Because your friend's life is resting on it. Please. I promised him I'd find you." They seem wary. They don't trust him. Izuku decides to continue. "I'm a kid. Do Do you really think I'm working with whichever people just attacked you? It's not quite true, but they don't need to know that. That seems to spur them into action. They turn to grab their packs off the floor, and the blonde turns back to Izuku. Tell us where he is. Go west until you find the river. Follow it downstream. You'll come to a clearing with a tree stump and a boulder. He's waiting there. Izuku turns to leave, but stops at the blonde's voice. Aren't you coming? I'll meet you there. He doesn't explain further, vanishing into the trees and leaping back into the sky. Something feels off when he gets close. Call it instinct, or foreshadowing, or anything else, but he knows something isn't right when he lands. When he bursts into the clearing he left Aizawa in, the man is no longer on the floor. He's swaying on his feet, right hand clutching a tiny flip knife. Between him and Izuku are 3 lean wolves, creeping closer and closer to Aizawa as his back hits the rock behind him. It's the middle of a harsh winter, and many of the creatures they normally hunt have moved to kinder temperatures. They must be starving. They wouldn't normally attack a human like this, especially not while Izuku's prowling around. He doesn't think. Everything happens in a second. Aizawa's eyes flick momentarily to Izuku as he emerges from the trees. The biggest wolf jumps at Aizawa the moment he breaks eye contact with it, but Izuku's reactions are quicker, and suddenly he's a wolf too, throwing himself at the one who jumped at Aizawa and knocking it aside. Aizawa's eyes widen, but he has the sense to move, clambering on top of the boulder with a pained hiss. Izuku pins the wolf down under his paws, the other 2 backing off as they watch. The creature struggles, teeth sinking into Izuku's front leg and forcing him to release his hold. It leaps up and back with a growl, about to jump at him again, but he shifts back to a human, his eyes yellow and lips pulled back to reveal sharpened teeth as he snarls. Blood streams down the open cut on his arm. Stop! The wolves back off. They know who he is. He is not prey. I know you're hungry, but you know not to attack people. The creature's ears flatten, but Izuku continues. You hunt them, they hunt you. Do you want to be hunted? The wolves whimper. Go! They run off. It's almost comical. Izuku turns to Aizawa, who's still sitting on the boulder, his jaw slack. You. It's kind of funny. Izuku sort of forgets sometimes that what he can do isn't normal. That he isn't just a normal human. What are you? That's a tough question. Do you want the long answer, or the short one? Aizawa laughs drily. Try the one that will make the most sense? I'm a spirit. Good. Sort of. Think. I protect life, the balance between life and death. I was born like this and I'll do it until I die. Aizawa raises his eyebrows. So you're not? He trails off. Human. Izuku finishes his sentence for him. No. I never was. At least, I don't think so. I'm everything. Everything that ever lived, breathed, thought. I'm all of it. He's aware it sounds slightly pretentious and very confusing, but it's the quickest way he can think of to explain. Aizawa looks like he wants to ask a lot more questions, even though he's breathless and pale and still suffering from a bullet wound, but Izuku turns at the sound of people approaching. It's only minutes before Aizawa's companions stumble through the trees, rushing over to him and helping him down. One of them fishes through their pack, retrieving a first aid kit from the front pocket. Izuku hears the murmured conversation between Aizawa and the blonde. Can you stay awake? Are you okay? Did he hurt you? He saved my life. He's not with them. If he's not with them, who the hell is he? Why is he out here? Aizawa locks eyes briefly with Izuku over the blonde's shoulder. Izuku gives the faintest shake of his head. Even though his instinct is telling him insistently that he can trust these people, he doesn't really want his secret getting out. Aizawa turns his eyes back to the blonde. I don't know. He didn't say anything. Just that his name is Izuku. I trust him. The blonde seems hesitant, but he accepts Aizawa's words. Izuku gives Aizawa a tiny smile and a grateful nod. Aizawa hisses in pain and shuts his eyes briefly as his wound is cleaned out. When he opens his eyes again, Izuku is gone. Izuku spends the rest of his sightseeing day and a decent amount of the night flying home. He's quite annoyed by the time he crosses the border and lands on the balcony of his flat. He wonders if it's worth trying to catch any sleep, but eventually decides he's too tired to care, and flops face first on his bed without taking anything off except his shoes. When he wakes up, it's 9 a.m. and the world feels slightly more alive. He drags himself off his bed, swapping his casual clothes for his black, armored work clothes and strapping his knives to all the various places on his body that he keeps them. He wasn't expecting to be back working so soon. It's hard to stick around in one place for a long period of time when you don't age, so he normally hangs around for a decade or so at a time and then drops off the face of the earth for a few years in between. It's been a bit different ever since he met Aizawa and started working for the Secret Services, but only because it's easier to cover your tracks when you have a friend in a high place. Without Aizawa, he would be long gone. Still, he owes Aizawa a favor, and he isn't one to avoid returning a debt. When he's done getting ready, and shoved a granola bar down his throat at record speed, he climbs out onto his balcony and up on the railing, letting himself fall forward and allowing his wings to catch him as he shifts. He doesn't need to be so dramatic about the whole thing, but sue him. God knows he needs a bit of entertainment in his life. It only takes him 10 minutes or so to get to Aizawa's office. The agency paid for him to have a flat close to headquarters so they could call him in at any time and not have to worry about waiting for him to travel in. He appreciates them covering the costs, but he sometimes wonders if he should be more concerned by how prepared they are to overwork him. Well, entertainment. He lands on Aizawa's window ledge, expecting to be let in like he normally is when he shows up like this, but there's another person in the office talking to Aizawa already. He's got his back turned to Izuku, but he has blonde hair that looks almost spiky, and he's wearing armored clothes similar to Izuku's. Aizawa meets his eyes through the glass. Izuku pokes his mind with his own, sending him a questioning thought, but Aizawa pushes him away. Go around, he hears Aizawa tell him. You sound exasperated. What's happened now? Aizawa just glares at him through the window, and Izuku takes the hint. When he finally knocks on the office door and pushes it open when Aizawa shouts for him to enter, his gaze meets that of the blonde man that he'd seen through the window. The man's eyes are red, his eyebrows slightly furrowed, and the corners of his mouth quirk almost imperceptibly into a tiny grin. "'Tis gorgeous." Izuku swallows. Aizawa coughs pointedly. Izuku. So glad you could make it. Izuku makes a mental note to irritate Aizawa enough to drive him mad when he next gets a chance. Aizawa gestures to the blonde man. This is Katsuki Bakugu. You're going to be working with him for the foreseeable future. Izuku thinks he might die. This must be fate. So you're Izuku? Wasn't told you were gonna be so effing small. Is he really as good as you say he is, old man? So much for fate. Now he thinks he might understand what's got Aizawa so exasperated. The man in question sighs. He's our best agent, Bakugo. Play nice. I know you two can work well together if you try to understand each other. Bakuga's eyes narrow, but he spins back to Izuku and holds out his hand. I guess you can call me Katsuki if we're going to be spending as much effing time together as I'm told. Izuku shakes his hand with more confidence than he feels. I'm Izuku. Izuku Midoriya. Izuku holds onto Katsuki's hand for slightly longer than normal. Aizawa coughs again. Bakugo, there's some final paperwork you need to finish off downstairs. Katsuki raises an eyebrow, but nods and leaves the office. Aizawa turns to Izuku. I know he's a handful. Izuku blinks. Aizawa continues. But he's got a lot of talent. You two will make a very successful duo if you manage to work together. I'm definitely not the problem when it comes to that. Aizawa sighs like that's precisely the problem. Just trust the process. Trust each other. Please, for the love of God, make this work. I don't need the commission down my throat asking why things aren't going to plan. Izuku nods and turns to go. His hand hovers over the door handle when Aizawa calls his name. He turns back. Don't. Izuku tilts his head. Don't let romance get in the way of things. Izuku feels his cheeks burning. Like you can talk, old man? Aizawa groans. Not you too. It's bad enough that Bakugo calls me that. I'm not even that old. Izuku snorts as he shuts the door behind him. Izuku is 200 years old when he finds the graveyard. He's sort of been looking for it for a while. He doesn't sleep much anymore, But when he does, his dreams are always filled with the same faces. He doesn't know who they are to him. Well, who they were. He knows they existed once. He knows he should know their names, but no matter how desperately he reaches for the memories, they stay just out of reach. It's frustrating. He tries not to think about it too much. He's been wandering around aimlessly for a long time now. He'd been hanging around various cities in Western Europe for a while, but decided socializing wasn't worth the risk when the Inquisition began to emerge. He's not exactly your picture-perfect example of a human being. He feels his instincts tugging at him while he's flying. Normally, he just ignores them when he's not in the mood to actively seek out danger, but this feeling is insistent. The further he continues the way he's going, the stronger the pull in the opposite direction is. He ignores it out of spite. It gets unbearable. Curse this bird brain, he thinks, and does a U-turn. He finds himself in a little town, long since abandoned and reclaimed by nature. Wooden beams are blackened and collapsing under their own weight, and the ground is singed and coated in ash in places. However this settlement ended, it wasn't pretty. Izuku's this close to tearing off his skin just to make that overwhelming, inescapable sense of horrible familiarity go away. He's close, but this isn't where his body wants him to go. He keeps walking. Eventually he finds it. It's a few miles out from the abandoned village, easy to miss if you don't have an internal compass practically dragging you there. He climbs a small hill. On top, there's a circle of stones, definitely man-made. That incessant tugging in his chest finally stops. His eyes stray to the center. 3 slabs lie flat on the ground, engraved with words that are obscured by overgrown moss. Hardly breathing, Izuku reaches out and brushes it away. The names under his hand send his world stuttering to a halt. The first reads Toshinori Yagi. The second reads Inko Midoriya. The third reads Izuku Midoriya. Izuku's fingers linger over his own name. It's a strange feeling. It feels like the gravestone of a completely different person. Whoever he was to the person who engraved this, that version of him died the day he did. He recognizes his mother's name. He thinks of the long green hair he sees in his dreams, and knows that the name and title fit. He doesn't know who Toshinori Yagi was to him, but the name is familiar. He reaches again for the memories, and still they slip out of his grasp. His fingers curl into the ground in frustration. Aizawa gives Izuku 2 days to pack his stuff up and vacate his flat. He reassures him that it'll still be there for him when he gets back, and that it's just being rented out while he's gone. He doesn't really believe him. He's quite fond of that flat. He also briefly wonders how long they're actually planning on him being gone, but quickly decides it's probably better not to think about that. With a train ticket and an address, Izuku makes his way to the base Aizawa described to him. The train takes forever, and it reminds him how much he hates traveling as a human. He could fly there in a fraction of the time, but with a heavy suitcase to drag behind him and at least a vague pretense of humanity to uphold, he admits it makes more sense to get public transport. He still makes a point of complaining about it to Aizawa, though. It's just so slow. You really have all this technology and you still can't go any faster. Did you call me just to complain? Yes, says Izuku earnestly. On the other end of the phone, Aizawa wonders why he even tries. You must be nearly there by now. Go do some coloring or whatever it is children your age do for fun. You're a horrible person. I hope it helps you sleep at night. What makes you think I sleep at night? Izuku isn't entirely sure if Aizawa is actually joking or not, so he opts to hang up instead. Aizawa breathes a sigh of relief and lets himself feel slightly smug at how effectively he's able to make Izuku leave him alone. Luckily, the train is almost at its destination, and Izuku gets up and grabs his suitcase as it pulls into the station. It rattles as he pushes it clumsily through the train doors and jumps after it. Soon, he's in a taxi, and the countryside is racing by yet again. He finds himself staring out the window, wishing he was out there instead of on his way to be cooped up in a building. He had been having a wonderful time on his break, until someone cut it short. Everything begins to make a bit more sense when the taxi pulls up to Izuku's new home. It's a beautiful big country house, all pillars and grand windows, large enough to accommodate the kind of operation he's joining but normal enough in this part of the country to not attract any unwanted attention. He vaguely remembers the Secret Services doing a similar thing during the Second World War. He's sort of blocked that PRD of time from his mind, though. It wasn't a great time for someone who's supposed to stop people from dying. He shakes himself as the taxi door opens and he's greeted by a man in a suit. He introduces himself as Nizu, the man in charge. He's short, weaselly, and slightly unnerving. Izuku trusts him immediately. We're going to have 2 pairs of agents living here while we test the program. There'll be more eventually, but only if you're successful enough. But don't worry. I have complete faith in you. The man smiles toothily, and Izuku kind of wants to poke him, just to see what would happen. He gives Izuku a very quick tour of the building. It's just as beautiful on the inside as it is on the outside, with ornate drawing rooms and furniture that looks far too expensive for a bunch of normal people to be using. They speed through the kitchens, the staff quarters. Izuku blinks at that, and has to remind himself what century he's currently living in, and the offices. It seems like there's more being run from here than just what Izuku is involved with, but he's aware it's not his place to ask. Aizawa will probably tell him sooner or later if it's anything interesting. They linger in the training grounds. There's a gym, a firing range, a row of battered-looking dummies, and a whole array of knives which Izuku is itching to get his hands on. It takes a while, but Nizu eventually pulls him away, taking him up to his room. He's handed the key and left alone, and when he opens the door, he finds his suitcase already waiting for him. The room is fairly small, but not confining by any means. The walls are painted a pale green, a sweet nod to Izuku's favorite color that he's sure isn't a coincidence. A single bed rests against one wall, next to a large wardrobe. The other wall has a door which leads into a bathroom with a shower. It's sort of like his flat. I can get used to this, he thinks. He has a few hours until dinner is served, so he heads back down to the training grounds. He's not really in the mood to do any kind of strenuous exercise, but those knives are just asking for him to go play around with them. He's surprised to find Katsuki there when he arrives. He's wearing a tank top and loose-fitting trousers, and he's hitting a punching bag like it personally offended him. It's not attractive. It's not. Izuku laughs nervously to himself. Katsuki turns at the sound of Izuku's footsteps. He tilts his head in recognition. You're the nerd I met the other day. What was your name? Deku. He smirks slightly as he says it, and Izuku knows he's just being rude because it amuses him. Well, 2 can play at that game. Izuku. And you're Kaken? He smiles sweetly and laughs to himself as Katsuki huffs. Whatever. Took your effing time getting here. Izuku walks over to the knives, picking one up absent-mindedly and turning it over in his fingers before returning it to its place. Trains are slow. Not my fault. Katsuki snorts. You can say that again. He's given up punching the bag by this point, instead coming over to see what Izuku's looking at. He picks up a knife himself, a small dagger with a black leather handle. Without turning to Izuku, he spins the knife towards his neck. He's quick, but Izuku is quicker, pulling one of his own knives out of a sheath on his wrist, knocking Katsuki's hand away, and pressing the tip against his throat. Katsuki meets Izuku's eyes, and he looks almost approving. Izuku realizes he was being tested. He's not entirely sure how to identify the feeling that curls in his chest at that realization. He drops his hand and returns the knife to its sheath under his sleeve. Katsuki huffs again and turns away. Not as weak as you look. Izuku can't tell if he's insulted or complimented by that. One day, Izuku meets a girl. She's pretty, brown-haired, lively. Her name is Achiko Uraraka. She lives in the city. Her parents are jewelry makers, and she loves them very much. She helps them in their workshop when she's not working at a nearby tavern to earn money. She eats dinner with them every evening, and she looks after them when they're injured or ill. She's intelligent, kind-hearted, and fun. She is everything anyone could want in a girl. Izuku runs into her in the street by chance. He's carrying a letter for some baron somewhere, just to earn some money, when he trips over his own feet. Really, he thinks as he falls over. You'd think with all those animal instincts I'd at least be able to stay upright. He never actually hits the ground, though, because a hand grabs the back of his shirt and pulls him back up to a standing position. He's greeted with a bright smile. Sorry about that. I saw you falling. That letter you're holding looks important. I didn't want it to get dirty. The girl laughs nervously. She seems sweet. People don't normally talk to Izuku like he's a normal person. This is a nice change. They go their separate ways, and Izuku doesn't think any more of it until a week later, when he's buying a meal at the first tavern he comes across and he finds himself face to face with the same girl. She looks just as shocked as he feels, and a faint blush creeps up her cheeks. Oh, you're the boy I helped on the street the other day. It's so good to see you again. He ends up going back quite a lot. He's not really sure why. It feels nice to finally be treated like there's nothing wrong with him. At first, he sits at the bar and talks to her as she works. Then she invites him to eat with her and her parents. She's easy to talk to, and as the months pass by, he finds himself spending time around her more and more. One night, they sit on the peak of a hill just outside the city. They ran out there, giggling, after a shopkeeper chased them out of his shop with a broom. It feels good to be a kid again. Izuku doesn't remember the childhood he lost, but he misses it all the same. The stars and the moon are out tonight. Izuku's always found old werewolf stories funny to hear, knowing he's the closest thing around to the fantastical creatures the myths describe, but he does always feel more calm when the moon is out. Maybe there's some semblance of truth to them in that regard. Achiko is talking about something that happened in the tavern earlier, but Izuku isn't really paying attention. He's lost in thought, watching absently as her mouth moves. She trails off eventually, when she meets his gaze. Her fingers curl around his where they rest on the ground next to him. She leans forward. He doesn't move away. Their lips meet. He doesn't feel anything. She pulls back. She looks sad but not upset. There's someone else, isn't there? It's not really a question. Izuku feels tears of frustration pricking at his eyes. He knows she's right as she says it, but he doesn't know why. He doesn't know. He doesn't remember. He just knows it's not her. He knows it's not a girl. Just another thing wrong with me to add to the list, he thinks. She wipes the tears off his face gently. It's okay. I hope you find each other. Izuku chokes down a sob. She leans forward and kisses his cheek, and then stands up and leaves. He doesn't call after her. He just watches her go. He leaves the next day, and never sees her again. He ignores the relief that washes over him when he finally leaves his human form behind again. As he bounds through waves of trees, paws hitting the ground rhythmically, he can't shake the feeling that he's running away from something. It's only a few weeks before the two of them are called up for their first mission. Izuku isn't as nervous as he probably should be. After all, it didn't take him long to realize that as spiky and unpleasant as Katsuki tries to come across, he's actually quite nice, somewhere deep down in there. It helps that even when Katsuki is outright threatening him, Izuku never feels like he's actually in danger. If Katsuki actually meant what he said, Izuku would know. His infallible sense of safety has kept him alive for a very long time, so he sort of trusts it by now. Besides, Katsuki has seemed more comfortable around Izuku since he tried to knife him. Izuku pointedly ignores all the things wrong with that. Since that happened on the training grounds, they've gotten to know each other a little bit better. Katsuki's parents are fashion designers. He was studying for a degree in engineering when he was asked to come and work for the Secret Services. They pulled him out of his training program early to bring him here. He hasn't said why he gave up his degree for this, but Izuku suspects it's just because he felt like he wasn't doing anything with his life. In return, Izuku's told Katsuki a bit about himself. Well, he's told him as much of the truth as he can. The rest is information that's technically legally accurate, but not quite true. Aizawa helped him set up a fake legal identity when he started working for him, just in case anyone decided to do a bit of digging and found that Izuku didn't even have a birth certificate. His mother is dead. His father was never around. He's an only child. He was an art student when he met Aizawa. Izuku's gut twists as he tells Katsuki all the things about him that could have been true if he was just a normal person. It's almost enough to make him feel like there's nothing different about him at all. Neither of them talk about where they learned to fight. It's not a topic either of them really want to broach, especially not when they're panting on the floor of the training grounds after being at each other's throats for 10 rounds, which is usually when the subject comes up. Still, They're surprisingly friendly with each other for people who just met. Izuku has to admit begrudgingly that Aizawa was sort of right. Their personalities are a good match for each other. They fit together in a really odd way that, Izuku thinks, only Aizawa could have predicted. Izuku softens Katsuki's fire. Katsuki brings out Izuku's fight. Katsuki still calls Izuku Deku. Izuku still calls him Kaken in return. The people around them have learnt to just accept it. Izuku is so comfortable that he can almost ignore that niggling sense of disembodied familiarity that's been hounding him again recently. He hasn't felt it in a long time. He had kind of hoped it wouldn't come back. They meet the other pair living at the house, but only briefly. Their names are Kirishima and Kaminari. Kirishima's hair is hilariously red, which Katsuki makes a point of making fun of at every available moment, and Izuku is sort of charmed by Kaminari's boundless energy. They're both fun to be around. Izuku wonders if they could be friends, after Aizawa decides to have mercy on him and free him from this job. Friends. The word still tastes strange in Izuku's mouth. The irony isn't at all lost on Izuku when Nisa tells him and Katsuki that they're being sent to Amsterdam for this first job. He can practically feel Aizawa laughing at him, and he wistfully mourns the break he didn't get to have. It's a fairly simple job as far as their line of work goes. Find the address they've been given, steal some files. It would be far easier if Izuku was working alone, but he can't say he minds the company. They walk back to their rooms together from Nisa's office. Amsterdam's nice, Izuku says. It's a shame we're only there for work. It's got a lot of history. Nerd, says Katsuki. Izuku translates that to something nicer in his head. Their rooms are next door to each other. Katsuki pauses as they both fumble with their keys. Hey Deku. Izuku turns to him. Katsuki's voice is quieter than usual. Are you nervous? Izuku shakes his head. Not really. I've done things like this a lot before. I'm used to working by myself. It's nice to have someone watching my back this time. The I trust you goes unspoken. But, are you? Katsuki growls. I don't get FNG nervous. Katsuki's heartbeat betrays him, but Izuku accepts his words silently. He has the muted realization that Katsuki's probably never done any real field work before. He doesn't really mull on it. They both enter their rooms and lock their doors behind them. That night, Izuku's dreams are haunted by a small boy, no more than 5 years old, with blonde hair and red eyes. He says something to Izuku over and over again, urgently. Izuku wakes up a few hours before sunrise, his skin crawling and nails digging into his palms, but he can barely remember what he dreamt of. He knows he's not going to get any more sleep. He's already lucky enough that he got the few hours that he did. Falling asleep and staying asleep have always been hard for him. The window in the back wall of his room is fairly small, with nothing like the balcony the window in his old flat has, but he can make it work. He slides it open, relieved when it opens enough for him to fit through as a bird. He's had to sneak out of windows and under doorways as a spider before, and it's an extremely disconcerting and unpleasant experience. They're so small. He definitely wasn't built to be that small. He forgets what little he remembers of his dreams that night as soon as the air brushes his feathers and lifts him gently into the air. It's such a good feeling. He often wonders how normal people live without it. He's out until sunrise, which is still fairly early in the morning. Winter has just ended and the days are beginning to get longer again, which is something of a relief to Izuku. He loves all the seasons, but spending a good proportion of each day in darkness really puts a damper on his mood, and it's not really practical to move hemispheres every winter, especially not when he's actually employed. He's about to return to his room when he notices Katsuki at his own open window, his eyes closed. He looks peaceful, which isn't a word Izuku would ever normally use to describe him. Izuku is about to leave him be, but Katsuki's eyes snap open, resting on him as he circles around in front of the window. He knows he should go and get ready himself, but he can't resist landing briefly on Katsuki's window ledge. He looks slightly taken aback, but a small smile tugs at his lips. They stare at each other for a few moments. Katsuki's eyes hold Izuku's gaze, piercing as if they're searching for something. When Izuku pokes hesitantly at Katsuki's mind, it doesn't recoil like human thoughts usually do. It leans into the touch. He doesn't know, he reassures himself, but he still squirms a bit under Katsuki's gaze as he sees something almost like recognition flash briefly in his eyes. Eventually, Katsuki lowers his eyes and retreats from his window. He slides it shut gently to avoid catching Izuku's wings, and Izuku is reminded again that somewhere beneath everything else, Katsuki is a good person. It isn't long before they leave. Nizu leads them around to the back of the building, where the ground stretches out into a huge, flat field. Katsuki raises his eyebrows like he knows what to expect. Izuku gives him a curious look, but Katsuki just smirks. Izuku hears the plane before he sees it. The low rumbling gets louder and louder as it gets closer, loud enough that Izuku's head begins to ache. He starts embarrassingly when the plane appears above them far lower than Izuku was expecting, and Katsuki laughs at him. As it circles around to fly perpendicular to them, Izuku realizes, definitely a bit later than he should have, but sue him, he's got other things on his mind, that the field in front of him is actually a runway, and the plane is landing right in front of them. Whoa, he breathes. Katsuki laughs at him again. Izuku sticks his tongue out in response. The plane is only on the ground for as long as it takes for Izuku and Katsuki to climb up the rope ladder the pilot throws down for them. As soon as the door clicks shut behind them, the plane jolts and begins to move again. Izuku falls asleep in his seat. It's sort of uncomfortable and slightly too upright, but he definitely underestimated how tired he would be later on when he woke up early this morning. When his eyes close, Katsuki is staring daggers at a spot on the wall, and when he wakes up again, his gaze hasn't moved an inch. The plane lands at a small airfield just outside the city, just as the sun is beginning to set. It's gone again within minutes of letting the two of them off, and suddenly it's just them and an address. The plane is picking them up in a day. Until then, they're on their own. They walk across the city mostly in silence, sticking to the shadows and avoiding security cameras. They're technically doing legal work, but it's still better to stay off official surveillance if they can help it. The address is for a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of the city, its entrance inconspicuous and guarded only by two men in black clothing. Civilians would probably assume it was just a storage space for expensive goods like jewelry. Izuku only knows it isn't something as innocent as that because he's been told, and because he can smell the oil on the guns that the guards have concealed beneath their coats. "Kaken," Izuku whispers. "Distract them and I can get in there, grab the files, and get out in minutes." Katsuki snarls. "Don't FNG tell me what to do. And we're supposed to be working together. Deku, I'm not even babysitting you while you do all the hard work." "Kaken. It's okay, I'll be safe. I've done this before, remember? Besides, you're far better at fighting than me." He throws that last bit in as a bit of strategic flattery. He's about 60% certain that he could beat Katsuki in a hand-to-hand fight if it actually came down to it. Katsuki's eyes narrow, but eventually he exhales and turns away. "Of course I am, shitty Deku." Izuku translates that confidently from Kaken speak into an agreement with his plan. Katsuki stalks off towards the guards, not even bothering to stay hidden. The guards turn to him, one of them opening his mouth to speak, but Katsuki is fast, and before the guard can even make a noise, he's unconscious on the floor, and Katsuki's arms are constricting around the neck of the other guard. Izuku doesn't wait for the second guard to pass out, and slips in the door behind him. He gives Katsuki a nod as they lock eyes, and Katsuki rolls his eyes at him. Although the building looks like a warehouse from the outside, the interior has been converted into part storage, part workshop, part office. The walls are lined with corridors that lead to smaller rooms. One of them is labeled file storage, and Izuku thinks that's probably a decent place to start. He shifts into something smaller as soon as he's out of Katsuki's sight. The place is crawling with officials and armed guards, and he's not really prepared to face them all. Once he's no longer human, sneaking past all the people is easy, and he quickly makes it inside the room he's aiming for. The files are marked clearly on a shelf on the wall opposite him. It's almost laughable how easy the people here made it for him to find them. He resumes his human form, piles the paper into a case he finds on the floor nearby, and snaps it shut. He's so busy giggling at how easy to find the files were that he forgets to pay attention to his surroundings, and so when he steps silently back out the door with the case clutched tightly in his hand, he runs headfirst into a tall man in a navy suit. He senses the danger immediately and ducks before he can even process what he's doing, narrowly missing a whack to the head by the barrel of the man's gun. The case makes fighting difficult, but he's not about to let it go and risk losing it, so he manages to grab a knife from his belt with one hand. He's not aiming to kill, but he sinks the blade into the man's thigh, and he falls to the ground with a choked groan. From there, Izuku wraps an arm around his windpipe and squeezes, waiting until he feels the man's mind slip into unconsciousness before he lets go. Breathes a sigh of relief, but promptly takes it back when he senses another person approaching. He spins around just in time to dive out the way of a gunshot, but by now the damage is done, because the whole building will have heard. 2 more people come running, blocking his exit, and he sighs internally. He had hoped to get in and out without a proper fight, but that wish has quickly gone down the drain. The first person crumples to the floor when Izuku hits them square in the forehead with the hilt of his knife. The second makes a valiant effort, managing to hit the knife out of Izuku's hand, but he gives up and scrambles off when Izuku breaks one of his lower ribs with a well-placed kick. He suddenly remembers the third, and he twists around, panicked. They're holding the knife he just dropped, their arm already moving to plunge it into his chest. With the case still in his grasp, he can't move fast enough to get out of the way. He raises his arm to take the hit instead, preparing himself for the pain, but it never comes. When Izuku looks down, he finds the tip of another knife protruding from his assailant's stomach. Then it disappears, and they collapse to the floor, replaced by Katsuki, looking unimpressed. "I could have sworn I heard you say you'd be safe, Deku." Izuku opens his mouth to give him a snarky reply, but just as he's about to speak, his attacker on the floor dies from his wound. Izuku feels it like a strike directly to his heart, the way the warm glow of his consciousness is extinguished as quickly as a candle flame. He gasps painfully, doubling over and falling to his knees, and Katsuki's playful expression drops. "Are you hurt? What happened?" Izuku takes a deep breath, forcing himself upright. "I'm okay. Took a hit is all." It's a feeble excuse, but Katsuki seems to buy it, albeit skeptically. Then Katsuki grins wildly and holds out his hand. "Guess we'll have to fight our way out, huh?" It's such a sight, Katsuki's face streaked with dirt as he holds one hand out to Izuku and clutches a bloody knife in the other. Izuku thinks it might be the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. Oh boy. He's down bad. It's weird. He hasn't thought about Achiko in a long time, but when he lets Katsuki pull him back up to standing and returns his grin with a bright smile, he swears he feels the ghost of her lips against his cheek and her gentle laugh over his shoulder. They actually manage to get out with minimal fighting. There's a back door out of the warehouse with only one guard on the other side. He's facing the other way and doesn't seem to notice the 2 of them. Katsuki prepares to fight him, but Izuku taps his shoulder gently and puts a finger to his lips with a tiny smile. Katsuki seems to get the hint and backs off. The 2 of them creep silently along the back wall of the warehouse, holding in laughter as they round the corner before taking off across the road and disappearing into the suburbs. The guard doesn't even turn around. They have half a day to kill now before they're getting picked up from the airfield. The people they just stole from will be on their tail if they stick around there for much longer, so they head deeper into the city and then out the other side, eventually settling in a park that seems big enough for them to safely hide in for the next few hours. Izuku feels exhaustion hit him, but he can see that Katsuki feels the same, and Izuku doesn't technically need sleep to survive, so he offers to take first watch over the case. Katsuki mumbles something that might be, "You better get some sleep yourself, shitty Deku," and then promptly falls asleep against a tree trunk. Izuku shifts into a fox and curls up next to him, scanning the area around them to make sure nobody's near. A couple of hours later, Izuku feels Katsuki start to wake up, so he reluctantly abandons the warmth of his fox form. Katsuki sits fully up, stifling a yawn, and slaps Izuku on the shoulder. Izuku yelps. "Deku, I told you to get some sleep, didn't I?" Izuku rubs his shoulder sheepishly. Kaken, I'm glad you care." Katsuki huffs. "Shut up. I don't want you to pass out on me before we make it to the plane." He grabs Izuku's shoulder more gently this time, pushing him back against the tree trunk he was just sleeping against before maneuvering himself so he fits next to him. Izuku pouts, but doesn't protest, especially not as Katsuki's body heat starts to warm him up again. He can feel his eyes slipping shut, but just before he loses consciousness, he thinks he hears Katsuki mutter, "Go to sleep, nerd. I'll watch." The sentiment fills him a warmth even brighter than the sparks he feels where Katsuki's shoulder brushes his own. It takes Izuku 300 years and the whole thing with Achiko to realize he's lonely. It takes him another 20 years of waiting for someone to treat him like a human again to realize he's really lonely. He goes back to look for Achiko once. But when he returns to the place where she used to live, he finds the house empty and the workshop covered in dust. He doesn't know how to find her from there. People turn away from him in the street when he tries to talk to them. A part of him wishes he'd pretended to love Achiko like she'd loved him, just so he could have held on to that feeling of finally being cared about. Deep down, he knows he never would have been able to do that to her. He wonders if he can actually die on his own terms at one point. He sways on the edge of a cliff and tries to imagine what would happen if he stayed human right up until he hit the ground. It's a pipe dream. He tilts forward and he falls, and no matter how much he tries to stop that switch in his mind from flicking, his wings catch him just before he collides with the ground. When he sleeps, he's lucky if he doesn't dream. When he does, it's of the people he used to know, dancing tauntingly away from his fingers as he tries desperately to grab onto them. He shouts at them, begging hoarsely for the memories, but they laugh at him, and they hold the memories just out of his reach. He calls their names. He wishes for his mother. He cries for the one who carved his name carefully into a slab of stone. They don't come. And still, he doesn't remember. The longer Izuku lives, the more he learns about who he is. His power becomes a natural extension of himself, as easy as breathing. It's tied to his emotions more than anything. He learns to control it. He gets better at pretending to be normal. It gets easier not to scare people away. Sometimes wonders if he's more animal than human, especially when he's angry or frustrated or scared, and his eyes turn yellow without him even thinking about it. When people turn him away because there's just something off about the way he acts, something inhuman. When it gets too bad, he runs back to the forest he woke up in all those years ago and surrenders the human part of himself. His memory is patchy when it comes to those times. He's never really sure how much time passes until he drags himself back to society and asks somebody for the date. He's not really sure why he exists. He helps people where he can. It's difficult to really make a difference when most people seem so wary of him. He feels like he's missing something. He wishes he wasn't alone. Then he discovers something new. He's been living in the same place for a few months now. It's a small building, not much more than a shed, but it's warm enough and it's far enough out of the nearest village that people mostly leave him alone. He grows flowers. It's strangely calming. He gets very attached to them. He doesn't really have anything else to get attached to. One of them gets trampled when a traveler knocks on Izuku's door asking for directions. The stem droops. The petals twist up and wither. The leaves turn brown. The faint glow of life inside it stutters and dies. Izuku feels it in his own heart. It's sort of the last straw for him. He cries. He knows that deep down he's not really crying over the flower. He holds its limp form in his hands. His tears make the remaining petals droop even more. He pours energy into it desperately, wishing that it would rekindle the little flame of life the plant used to have. It does. The flower blooms again. The petals are even more red than they used to be. The leaves are slightly more green than before. Izuku blinks once, and then bursts into tears again. It's a tiny thing, but it's hope. He hasn't had hope in a long time. Izuku and Katsuki sit mostly in silence on the flight back. It's companionable. Izuku kind of enjoys it, even though he's not really used to Katsuki being quiet. The plane lands joltingly, and stutters slowly to a halt. Katsuki pulls open the door, pointedly ignores the rope ladder, and jumps down. Izuku snorts at him, throwing the case with the files in down for Katsuki to catch and then following suit. When he lands, he sees Kirishima and Kaminari waiting at the side of the runway, next to Nizu. He grins and grabs Katsuki's wrist. Kaken, look, they're waiting for us. Katsuki grumbles, but doesn't shake Izuku off. Izuku counts it as a win, and drags him over to greet the people waiting for them. Katsuki hands Nizu the case and gives him a death stare. Nizu returns the stare. They hold eye contact for a good few seconds, and then break it at the same time and turn away from each other. It's hilarious. Izuku stifles a giggle with his hand. The moment Nizu leaves, Izuku turns to Kirishima and Kaminari with a wide smile. He starts as Kirishima pulls him into a hug, but he doesn't pull away. It feels nice. Bro, you did awesome, both of you. He directs that last part pointedly at Katsuki. Tish, says Katsuki dismissively, with a look on his face that totally betrays him. It was effing easy. Kirishima's smile doesn't falter. Izuku chokes on air. He means thank you. Katsuki shoves him playfully. Shut up, Deku. Kaminari puts a hand on Kirishima's shoulder. We're going out for drinks in a bit. Wanna come? Izuku grins. That sounds great. We'll be there. Katsuki turns to him, unimpressed. Will we? Yes, says Izuku, staring him down. Katsuki blinks, but relents. Effing fine. Izuku obstinately pretends he doesn't notice Kirishima and Kaminari share a knowing glance. An hour later, they're sat at a bar somewhere in town. Alcohol doesn't actually do anything to Izuku, and he thinks it kind of tastes bad anyway, but he's more than happy to watch Kaminari and Katsuki down shots and bicker over who's better at it. He feels normal. It's strange. There's a warm glow in his chest. Kaminari gets drunk very quickly, and Kirishima smiles apologetically and suggests they go home before he passes out and they have to carry him to a taxi. Izuku helps him support Kaminari's weight as they shove him through the door of the first taxi they come across. He drapes himself dramatically over two seats, and Kirishima climbs in awkwardly after him. Izuku and Katsuki wait for the next taxi. When they get home, Katsuki grabs Izuku's wrist like Izuku had done to him earlier. Izuku gives him a confused look, but follows. We're going for a walk, says Katsuki. You're tipsy, Izuku points out. Katsuki scoffs. We're going for a walk, he repeats, and Izuku can't really say no when Katsuki's hand is dangerously close to sliding down to his palm. Okay, Izuku breathes. They follow the path worn into the ferns in the forest for a while. They don't say much. Katsuki doesn't let go of Izuku's wrist. After half an hour, Izuku takes the plunge and rotates his hand to slip his fingers through Katsuki's. Katsuki doesn't pull his hand away. They break off the path eventually. Izuku isn't too concerned. They won't get lost. His sense of direction is kind of unrivaled. They end up lying next to each other on the floor, staring at the sky through a gap in the trees above them. Katsuki's a bit more sober now, but he still hasn't let go of Izuku's hand. It's nice living out here. You can't see the stars when you're in the city, Izuku says to fill the silence. There are more interesting things on the ground. Izuku turns his head to face Katsuki. Oh yeah? Like what? Katsuki glances at him, but doesn't answer. When Izuku starts to shiver from the cold, Katsuki sits up. We should go back. Izuku sits up too. Yeah. They walk back in silence. They're still holding hands. When they finally get back to their rooms, it's almost sunrise. Just before they turn to go their separate ways, Izuku smiles at Katsuki. I had fun tonight. The corners of Katsuki's mouth quirk upwards. Yeah. They both go into their rooms and shut their doors behind them. Izuku misses the warmth of Katsuki's hand against his. The next day, Izuku breaks into Katsuki's room. Well, he doesn't really break in. The door is locked, but he goes through the window. It was open. It's not his fault Katsuki didn't shut it. He sat on his bed, reading some random book he found on a shelf in one of the drawing rooms here, when he's suddenly hit with a pang of loneliness. He used to feel like this all the time before he met Aizawa, but it hasn't been as bad recently. He wonders distantly if he's getting too close with Katsuki too quickly. He pushes that thought aside before he can overthink it. So he dog-ears the page he's on, shuts the book, and shifts to a bird. He climbs out his window with the book clutched in his talons and half flies, half hops across to Katsuki's window ledge. The window is still open from before Katsuki disappeared a few hours ago to get some training in. Izuku just wriggles through the gap, returns to his human form, and installs himself on the floor to continue reading his book. That's the image Katsuki finds when he comes back to his room not half an hour later. He pauses in the doorway, looking entirely unimpressed. Deku, what the F dash dot? Izuku looks up at him with innocent eyes. How the F, did you even get in here? Izuku blinks owlishly. The window was open, he says like it's the most obvious thing in the world. Katsuki splutters. Why the F, are you sitting on my floor? I wanted company, Izuku says with a shrug. Katsuki stares at him for a few seconds, and then sighs. Fine. Just, don't be irritating. Izuku smiles sweetly. Kaken, I'm never irritating. Katsuki scoffs. Yeah, right. Katsuki disappears into the bathroom to shower, and emerges half an hour later in comfy trousers and a loose-fitting shirt with a towel hanging around his neck. He pauses when he sees Izuku like he'd forgotten that he's there, but eventually just rolls his eyes at him and collapses on his bed, grabbing his phone from his bedside table. The two of them stay like that, silently enjoying each other's company, until someone knocks on their door to call them for dinner. It's the calmest Izuku has felt in a long time. He comes back the next day, climbing in through the window again and continuing his book on Katsuki's floor. On the third day, he finds that Katsuki has left his door unlocked for him, so he doesn't have to go through the window anymore. It becomes a routine for them, a way of taking a break from life when the rest of their days are filled with training and briefings. After a week, Katsuki joins Izuku on the floor, their shoulders brushing like when they were in Amsterdam. Eventually, Izuku gives up on his book and falls asleep on Katsuki's shoulder. Izuku finds a calf dying in a farmer's field. It's sprawled out on the grass, its tiny legs bent at awkward angles and its head half buried in the ground. It's foaming at the mouth and whining quietly, and Izuku's heart breaks. Its mother hovers behind it, nuzzling its neck helplessly. She whimpers softly and moves aside as Izuku approaches. He kneels beside the calf, placing a gentle hand on its trembling body. He can feel its struggling heartbeat slowing more and more, and the light inside it is fading rapidly. He hears the farmer approaching, but he ignores the sound of his footsteps and heavy breathing. He needs to concentrate for this. He closes his eyes and focuses on the dim glow of the calf's consciousness. He doesn't have long. He knows his limits by now, and bringing something this large back from the dead is a lot more difficult than healing it while it's still alive. He imagines himself floating in darkness, with the calf's light in front of him. He takes it in its hands, nursing the tiny flame and letting it burn brighter. He feels his own energy draining quickly as he redirects it towards the calf, but he doesn't mind. If he can save a life, it doesn't matter. His eyes snap open. Light is curling protectively around him and the calf as he maintains the connection for a few seconds longer, and then it dissolves into the air when he's certain the calf is healed and breaks the link off. The calf stands up, wobbly but alive, and runs to its mother. She whines happily. The farmer is staring at Izuku, eyes wide with fear. Izuku gives him a weak smile and promptly passes out. He wakes up in a cell with HNDCFFS around his wrists. With the metal digging this tightly into his skin, he can't shift. Panic rises in his throat. There's nothing he hates more than being restrained. The smell of damp and dirt is overwhelming, and there's hardly enough light to see the outline of the cell. He can tell he's underground, and that there are people on the other side of the walls to either side of him, but beyond that, he's completely disorientated. He tried to drag himself over to the cell door, but the shackles dig even further into his wrists. They break the skin, and blood begins to pool beneath the metal. That will scar, he thinks helplessly, collapsing back against the wall and letting his eyes slip shut. He can escape the moment the shackles come off. Until then, he just has to wait. Without any natural light, he doesn't know how much time passes, but he thinks he's been asleep for a few hours when he finally hears the lock on his cell door rattle and the door swings open. His jailer is a burly man, with scarred arms and a hunting knife hanging from his belt. He scowls at Izuku but says nothing, separating his shackles from the chain that binds them to the wall and grabbing Izuku's shoulder roughly. He's pushed out of the door and up a flight of stone stairs. He winces as they emerge into bright sunlight. Izuku recognizes his surroundings as the town closest to the farm he found the calf at. His jailer leads him past the rows of thatched houses to the town center, where a makeshift pyre has been erected out of dry discarded firewood. A length of rope lies on the floor. He realizes what's happening. Villagers gather around the pile of wood, staring at him with a mixture of fear, disgust, and awe. He spots the farmer that found him earlier. The man's hands curl into fists by his side as Izuku meets his eyes. It's sort of humbling to be on this side of an execution. He's seen them happen before, of course, but he tries to stay away if he can help it. They're never fun to watch. Now he understands how it feels. He's used to being ignored by people, sure, but this is entirely new. He feels like an exotic pet being put down because his captors have decided he can't be tamed. It makes his insides crawl. He saved a life, and yet they condemn him. He wonders if he'll ever find people who are willing to just accept him without question. There's a brief moment, as his jailer fumbles with the key to unlock his shackles, that he remembers balancing on the edge of a cliff and wondering if the fall would kill him. He wonders if the person he'd been in that moment would have let them light the fire right now. But then he remembers the hope he felt when he made that flower bloom, and the warmth of the mother's happiness when her calf stumbled to its feet and ran to her, and he decides he's not that person anymore. The key clicks in the lock of his HNDCFFS, and they split open. The jailer grabs Izuku's wrists and presses them together, preparing to tie them back up with rope. Izuku doesn't wait for the jailer to finish. He brings his knee up into the man's stomach with as much force as he can muster, and the jailer gasps hoarsely and stumbles back a few steps. He tears the rope off his wrists and backs off. He can shift now, but he's still hesitant to bare himself to all these people. He tells himself it's because he doesn't need word of his identity spreading around. Deep down, he knows it's because a part of him still hopes they won't hate him for who he is. The villagers part as he moves towards them. He meets the gaze of a small girl, no older than 7 or 8, staring at him with fear-filled eyes. She's so young that Izuku imagines she doesn't even know why she's scared, beyond because she's been told to be. Blind hatred, spread around like disease. A single tear rolls down Izuku's cheek. He runs through the gap in the audience. Some chase after him, but he ducks into an alleyway and shifts once he's out of sight. By the time his pursuers round the corner, he's gone. Aizawa calls Izuku the day before he and Katsuki leave for their next mission. He's curled up comfortably on Katsuki's bed where it meets the corner of the room, music playing quietly through his headphones, when his phone rings. Katsuki is sprawled out next to Izuku on the mattress, his shoulder resting next to Izuku's leg. He still pushes Kirishima and Kaminari away when they try to hug him. Izuku wonders what's different about him that Katsuki is so comfortable sharing space with him. He jumps at the sound of his ringtone and answers the call. Katsuki lifts his head lazily to find out what startled him. Izuku mouths, "Aizawa," at him, and Katsuki nods and lies back down. Izuku gets up and goes back to his own room for some privacy. "Hey, problem child," Aizawa says. "Aizawa, haven't heard from you in a while. How's things?" "As always. Not the same without you getting fur all over my chair." Izuku giggles. "Sorry. I'll pay you a visit soon if you're missing me that badly." "Gano. I'm enjoying every second you're not harassing me. Please keep it that way for as long as possible." Izuku knows he doesn't mean it. "But that's not why I called," Aizawa continues, his tone becoming more serious. "How are you doing, Izuku?" "I'm good. It's so pretty here. The house we're in is gorgeous." He knows that's not what Aizawa was asking. "No, Izuku. How are you? I know people are hard for you. It feels strange to not be able to keep an eye on you all the time. You'll tell me if something's not okay? I admit I threatened you into this, but it's not outside of my power to get you out if you really need me to." Izuku sighs. He had hoped they'd be able to avoid serious talk, but apparently not. He really appreciates Aizawa's concern. It makes him feel warm in a way nothing did for almost 1,000 years. He just struggles to open up to people. He forgets sometimes that Aizawa isn't about to just leave him to fend for himself the minute he becomes tough to deal with. It's weird. Even though he's been alive for such a long time, he still feels like a kid. He'll never admit it, but part of him relishes the way Aizawa treats him like he would treat any other teenager. I'm okay. It's taken a bit of getting used to, but everyone's been good to me, which is kind of a first. And he swallows his pride. You were right about me and Kaken. Kaken? He forgot Aizawa didn't know about that. Katsuki. I thought so. Izuku doesn't like how Aizawa sounds like he knows exactly what's going on between them. If he didn't know better, he would say the voice on the other end of the phone sounds amused. Shut up, Izuku says weakly. Seriously, Zuku? I'm glad you're doing okay. I know it's not been easy for you. The nickname makes Izuku smile. No. But you've helped, a lot. I can't ever thank you enough for what you've done for me. I only showed you basic kindness, kid. I'm surprised nobody else ever had. Izuku thinks faintly of Achiko. Well, either way. Thanks. Aizawa laughs gently. Now, stop taking up my precious time and get back to whoever it was you were with before my call made you leave the room. Izuku flushes. How do you know that? My footsteps weren't that loud. You're not as subtle as you think you are, problem child. Run along now. I'm sure Kaken is waiting for you. Izuku can hear the smirk in Aizawa's voice. I regret not leaving you to die in that forest. I'm going now. Goodbye. I hope someone dumps a load of paperwork on you today. Sure. I'll make sure to think of you while I relax in my comfortable home with my loving husband and safe, stable job. Well, that's just a step too far. Izuku hangs up on him out of spite. The second time Izuku meets Aizawa is just as accidental as the first. He hadn't been expecting to ever see him again after their first meeting. It's been a few years since that day, and Izuku has been working on and off for various secret agencies during that time. They all have his number, and they call him in when they need something done particularly quickly and quietly, but it's not often. They pay him decently, but jobs are so few and far between that it's only just about enough for him to survive on. It's definitely not enough to rent a flat. Most of the time he sleeps on the street or in train stations. On good days, a stranger opens their door to the hungry-looking cat they find wandering the streets. On bad days, he curls up outside a shop to stay out of the rain and sleeps fitfully. The dreams are worse on those days. He's in the offices, waiting for his briefing on a job he's just been called in for, when he runs into Aizawa. He's with the blonde man he'd been traveling with before, leaning against the wall at the back of the room and laughing at something the other just said. The blonde has an arm slung over Aizawa's shoulder, and Aizawa is leaning slightly into the touch. Aizawa's eyes land on Izuku, and he freezes mid-sentence. The blonde turns, and his face lights up when he sees who Aizawa is looking at. Izuku makes his way over to them sheepishly. Aizawa still looks slightly disbelieving. Izuku. Izuku laughs nervously. That's me. It's good to see you again, Aizawa. Then Aizawa is hugging him, and wow, that's a really strange feeling. Strange, but not unpleasant. Not in the slightest. Aizawa pulls away, and Izuku misses the warmth. I never thanked you for saving my life. I wouldn't be here now if you hadn't found me that day. Izuku gives him a genuine smile. I'm glad I could help. Then the blonde is in front of him, shaking his hand. I'm Hisashi. We never met properly. Apart from when I attacked you. Sorry about that, by the way. It's so good to finally meet you officially. Thank you for saving Shuta's life. He talks a mile a minute. Izuku almost struggles to keep up with what he's saying, but he sees the fond look that Aizawa gives the blonde over his shoulder, and he tries his best to return his enthusiasm. It's no problem really. I didn't realize you worked here, Aizawa says. If I'd known, I would have looked for you sooner. Oh, I don't really. They just call me in when they need me, Izuku replies. I don't actually live in a forest in the middle of nowhere, you know. Aizawa's eyes narrow. So where do you live? Izuku falters. That's how Izuku finds himself living with Aizawa for a while. He offers to split the rent, even though he can't really afford it, but Aizawa insists on covering it. I earn enough, he says. Let me do this for you. Think of it as a thank you. A few years later, Aizawa finally gets promoted, and his first act in his new position of power is to employ Izuku officially. His second is to help him set up a legal identity as a safety net. You shouldn't have to use this information ever, really, in this line of work, he explains. But it's good to have it there just in case. Izuku's pretty sure Aizawa's close circle of friends more or less find out the basics about his identity eventually, because when he's still around and looking like a teenager 20 years later, they still pretend like there's nothing to be suspicious about. Izuku's surprised to find he doesn't mind that Aizawa's told them. He appreciates the normality. Somewhere along the line, Aizawa stops treating him like someone he owes a debt to. Instead, he treats him like a friend. Sometimes he treats Izuku more like he's his kid. Either way, it's not an unwelcome feeling. The small spark of hope kindling inside him begins to grow into a flame. He doesn't dream as much of his mother and the other people he used to know. He sort of has a family in real life, now. The next day, Izuku and Katsuki are back on a plane and on their way to France. They spend far less of this flight in silence than their first, going over their brief and their plan together, partly to consolidate and partly just to help calm their nerves. The agency they work for is associated with their government, but legally independent, so they get jobs from a lot of different people across the world. This time, they're on their way to a confirmed black market hub filled with dangerous, illegal goods and weapons. Their job is to get in there and rig explosives to blow it up. Find the boiler room. Wire the explosives on the go. Make it look like an accident so the media doesn't look too much into it. It's difficult but doable. The make it look like an accident part complicates things a bit. The main issue will be getting out before the explosives go off. Izuku has a small black rucksack with all the parts and tools he needs to construct the bomb on the spot once they get in there. It's a bit fiddly, but it's nothing he can't manage. He was around when this technology was invented. It would be embarrassing if he had no idea how to work with it. He and Katsuki make it to the building by nightfall. Sneaking around in the dark is easier and safer, but a base for illegal activity like this is bound to be far busier at night. So Izuku knows he and Katsuki have to stay vigilant. They get in there fine. The building is big and dilapidated, with crumbling brick walls and smashed glass, so it's easy enough to sneak around the back and climb in through a broken window. From there, they run silently down the back staircase and towards the boiler room. The only surveillance they pass on the way is a tripwire set at the top of the stairs, which Izuku notices from a distance and steps over easily. Katsuki follows suit. Besides that, it's unnervingly quiet. It sets every bone in Izuku's body on edge. It's comforting, the way he and Katsuki work together like a well-oiled machine. They've spent so much time together recently, training and relaxing, that they've learnt each other's tells and body language fluently. It doesn't really take many spoken words for them to communicate anymore. The boiler room door is a hunk of metal, surprisingly reinforced given the state of the building's exterior. It's locked, and Izuku quickly notices the alarm system wired against the hinges. It's rigged, he whispers to Katsuki. If we open it without a keycard, it'll set an alarm off. Katsuki looks at him thoughtfully. How quickly can you wire the bomb? I'd need about 2 minutes, Izuku responds. Then he realizes why Katsuki is asking. It's too dangerous. We'll be cornered in a room with armed people flooding in to attack us, and only one of us will be free to fight. It's a strategic nightmare. Have some faith in me, Deku. I can hold the door shut for long enough. You just gotta work fast. Kaken. Izuku says, knowing he's lost the fight already. Katsuki looks him in the eyes. Deku, can you do it or not? Izuku steels himself. Yes, I can do it. Katsuki grins at him, turns around, and kicks the door open. The alarm sounds instantaneously, loud and obnoxious. Katsuki holds the door open and Izuku slips in, slinging the rucksack off his shoulder and emptying the contents of the main pocket onto the floor. Behind him, Katsuki shuts the door again and positions himself so that he can hold it shut if anyone tries to open it. It's swelteringly hot in the room, sticky and unpleasant. Izuku gets to work, fingers working quickly and deftly with the wires. He's practiced this before back at base, so he's certain he knows what he's doing, but he still has to resist the temptation to second-guess himself every time he does something. A shout comes from outside the door. Someone bangs on it. Katsuki puts all his weight into keeping it closed. A knife wriggles through the gap between the door and the wall, sinking into Katsuki's arm and leaving a deep cut on his wrist. He hisses but doesn't move away. Blood streams onto the floor. "Deku, you might want to hurry the F up," Katsuki growls. "I'm going as fast as I can," Izuku responds, trying to keep the stress out of his voice. He fumbles with the last few wires, but eventually manages to set the timer and chuck the bomb on top of one of the boilers. It disappears out of sight, and he turns back to Katsuki. "It's done. Now we just have to get out." Izuku unsheathes one of his knives and steels himself yet again. Katsuki nods at him and leaps away from the door. It flies open, and a few people stumble into the room. Izuku and Katsuki are quick on them, knocking them out as efficiently as they can. Neither of them aim to kill. It's an unspoken agreement between the two of them. More people flood in and they keep fighting. Izuku bounces between attackers like a pixie, using his knife to hit places that aren't fatal, but will hurt enough or cause enough blood loss to knock someone unconscious. He loses one knife to someone's leg. Another gets knocked out of his hand. A third gets stolen straight out of his belt. He's especially bitter about that one. Blood still pours from the cut on Katsuki's arm. He's looking more and more pale by the second. Izuku watches mournfully as his final knife gets stuck in someone's limb, remembers the timer on the bomb, and decides it's time to get out. "Kaken." Katsuki looks over at him briefly. "We need to leave." Katsuki seems to understand, and ducks under someone's knife as he makes his way towards the door. Izuku meets him in the middle. They glance at each other, panting heavily, and then run out. Katsuki stumbles on the way back up the stairs, the blood loss beginning to properly catch up with him. Izuku ends up supporting most of his weight as they stagger out the building. They're both breathing hoarsely as the cool air hits their faces. The bomb will go off in about 2 minutes. They need to get as far away from here as they can in that time. Someone follows them out the door. Izuku, gasping for breath and almost collapsing himself under Katsuki's weight, doesn't notice them until they run at him from the side. He reaches for a knife. He remembers he doesn't have any left. Katsuki is swaying on his feet, hardly able to even support his own weight, let alone fight. Izuku makes the only decision he can. He shifts form right in front of Katsuki, throws his attacker to the ground hard enough to knock him unconscious, and shifts back. When he turns around, panting heavily, Katsuki is staring at him with wide eyes. Then those eyes roll into the back of his head and he falls to the floor, unconscious. Izuku isn't sure if he was conscious enough to see anything, but he shakes himself. No time to worry about that now, he thinks, definitely worrying about it. They now have about a minute and a half to get away, and Katsuki isn't moving anywhere by himself anytime soon. He needs medical attention and possibly a blood transfusion. Izuku shifts to a horse and somehow, through sheer force of will, manages to maneuver Katsuki onto his back. Then he takes off at as high a speed as he can manage without Katsuki falling off, covering as much ground as he can in the time before the explosives he just rigged go off. The resounding boom shakes the ground. Izuku feels a few people die. He winces, but he's too full of adrenaline and focused on Katsuki right now to really feel the pain. When he finally decides they're far enough away that it's safe to slow down, he leans Katsuki's unconscious form against a wall and retrieves a first aid kit from the front pocket of his rucksack. He cleans and bandages Katsuki's wound, but that's all he can do. He lost a lot of blood. They can't wait until they get back to the country house to get him medical care. Without thinking, Izuku picks up Katsuki in his arms and carries him. There's a hospital nearby. It takes far too long to cover the distance. Izuku's muscles are numb by the time they make it to the entrance. The doctors and nurses look extremely concerned when Izuku stumbles in, face streaked with soot, dirt, and sweat, barely managing to hold Katsuki in his arms, but they jump into action immediately. A doctor asks Izuku what happened. He's lucky he's able to understand what she says to him in French. He lost a lot of blood from a cut on his arm and passed out. They don't push more than that. They put Katsuki on a hospital bed and immediately start a blood transfusion. Izuku doesn't leave the room. Nobody tells him to. When they finally finish, and the doctor tells him that Katsuki's going to be okay, he feels like he can finally breathe again. He takes a seat in the uncomfortable plastic chair by Katsuki's bed and waits for him to wake up. Katsuki wakes up a few hours later, about 2 hours before their plane is scheduled to pick them up and take them home. His eyes open slowly, and he sits up as he tries to orientate himself. What the f happened? Izuku blinks tiredly. You passed out from blood loss. That was at the building. How did we get here? I carried you. All the effing way? Katsuki looks incredulous. Izuku averts his gaze. Yeah. What happened when I passed out? There was someone else, wasn't there? Izuku cringes internally, but keeps his face still. Someone followed us out of the building. I knocked him out right as you passed out. Katsuki's eyes unfocus for a moment. He looks torn. I could have sworn I saw. He trails off and shakes his head. Izuku doesn't push. Hopefully Katsuki will think it was just something his brain made up while he was delirious from blood loss. Luckily, the subject is dropped. Katsuki seems tired, lethargic even, but he rips the needle out of his arm and stands up. He sways for a moment, looking a little like he's about to pass out again, but then he takes a step forward. Come on. Let's get out of here before they start asking questions. It's not ideal to leave when Katsuki's still slightly out of it, but it's true that they don't particularly want to be around when the doctors start asking questions that they're not able to answer. Izuku puts a hand on Katsuki's arm, making sure he's able to stay upright, but lets him lead them out of the hospital room and towards the exit. They climb into a taxi outside the hospital. Izuku has a couple of euros hanging around in his rucksack that he'd put in there just in case. Thankfully, the taxi driver doesn't say anything to them. They make it to the airfield on time. Katsuki passes out again on the flight home. When they land, he's taken off to another hospital, but Izuku is firmly reassured that he'll be totally fine. He knew that already, but it still feels like a relief to hear it from someone else. He sits alone in Katsuki's room that night, reading another book he found on the shelves. Izuku hears whispers of Shigaraki before he meets him. The rumors spread quickly. Talk of a young man with white hair who roams the streets at night and kills for fun. He feels it too, the presence of something dark. The feeling has been lingering over him recently, and he had just chalked it up to stress and exhaustion, but now he's wondering if there might be something more tangible behind it. Izuku finds a dead dog in the street. It's not an unusual thing, really, but there's something different about this. He crouches beside it. When he realizes what's happened, the air leaves his lungs. He chokes on nothing and doesn't try to stop the tears from flowing. This isn't an accident. This isn't even murder. This is SDSM. It's horrific. Normally, when a living creature dies, the glow inside it fades away peacefully. This is different. The dog is dead, but its life force is still there, mangled and corrupted. What would usually be a ball of light is now a tangle of blackened strings which writhes painfully under the touch of Izuku's thoughts. His heart breaks. This animal must have been in a lot of pain before it died. He wonders what kind of creature could do this. He wonders what kind of monster would do this. The kindest thing he can do now is extinguish its consciousness entirely. It hurts him to do so, both emotionally and physically, but that doesn't matter to him. Not if it will help the dog. He feels someone's presence behind him, suffocating. He turns around. The man in front of him looks no older than 20, but his hair is a brilliant white and he wears a cruel smile. Izuku can feel the power radiating from him in nauseating waves. It feels familiar, somehow, but he can't quite place it. I see you found one of my little experiments. Isn't it interesting? Izuku almost jisses at the man's sickening tone. It was you. You did this, he snarls. The man smiles wider. You must be Izuku. It's wonderful to finally meet you. Izuku tries not to let his eyes widen. Who are you? How do you know my name? The man puts on a hurt expression. Don't you recognize me? Suddenly, Izuku realizes why the man's power feels familiar. It's the same feeling that rolls over him in waves every single time he dreams at night. My name is Tomura Shigaraki. His smile reaches even further across his face, twisting his features. I'm just like you, Izuku. Izuku stops breathing. No, he thinks. It's just me. I'm alone. I've always been alone. A bird flies overhead. Shigaraki reaches his hand into the air and twists his wrist sharply. The bird drops from the sky like a stone, dead. Izuku feels it like a stab to the heart, and he gasps in pain. It's like his own power, but somehow reversed. Where Izuku heals, Shigaraki hurts. Where Izuku saves, Shigaraki kills. It feels so fundamentally, chokingly wrong. We can do so much. Let me show you. Izuku backs off, his breathing uneven. No. Never. Shigaraki stays where he is, eyes following Izuku with amusement. That's okay. I'm sure we'll meet again soon. He turns and walks calmly, purposefully, into the gloom. Izuku remains frozen in place, helplessly watching Shigaraki as he disappears. He tries to shake off the crushing feeling in his chest that if Shigaraki had wanted him dead just then, he would have been near powerless to stop it. The bird stays dead in the middle of the cobbled street, taunting him. Katsuki is discharged from hospital late the next day. Izuku's glad. He knew Katsuki would be fine, but it was still unpleasant to see him in the state he'd been in the day before. Izuku gives Katsuki half an hour to himself before he gets up from his own bed and goes to knock on his door. Nobody answers him, but the door is unlocked, so he pushes it open gently. Katsuki is sitting on his bed, his sleeve pulled up to reveal a nasty scar stretching across most of his forearm. Izuku falters. He had seen how big the cut was when he bandaged it in the street, but he hadn't realized it would scar like that. Katsuki is staring at it with empty eyes, his fingers brushing over the skin. He doesn't look up as Izuku enters. Didn't think I'd end up with a scar like this so effing young, he mutters bitterly. Izuku sits on the bed next to him. He rests his fingers on top of Katsuki's where they're touching the scar, and slowly pulls his hand away. He turns to look at Katsuki's face, and a pair of red eyes meets his own. This isn't about the scar, is it? Izuku asks, knowing the answer. Katsuki turns away. The soft no is almost inaudible. Izuku curls his fingers around Katsuki's where they're still touching. Talk to me. Katsuki scoffs and lowers his head. I'm effing fine. It's an obvious lie. Izuku squeezes Katsuki's hand gently. It wasn't your fault. I was helpless. His voice breaks on the last word. I hate it. One knife, and I'm practically useless. Izuku exhales. Kaken. He gets no response. Katsuki. Katsuki's breath hitches, and he lifts his head. Izuku lifts one of his own sleeves, revealing a messy line of pale scars that circle his wrist. Katsuki frowns. Those look like HNDCFFS, Izuku finishes. Yeah. Katsuki's eyes widen, but Izuku continues before he can say anything. It doesn't matter how I got these, but the point is that I know what it's like. To feel helpless. To have that reminder engraved into your skin to taunt you every single day. But I worked harder. I got better. I put my trust in people. And now it's just a reminder of how far I've come. Katsuki looks at Izuku like he's asking for permission, and Izuku nods. He reaches out to touch Izuku's wrist, and Izuku's breath catches. He shivers under the contact, so careful and gentle. He thinks this is what Katsuki is really like, underneath the brash persona he presents to the world. Katsuki softly lowers Izuku's sleeve back down to cover his wrist, wraps his hand around Izuku's arm, and lets himself fall back against his mattress, pulling Izuku down with him. Izuku curls up against Katsuki's side, letting his breathing match the rise and fall of Katsuki's chest until it lulls him to sleep. The next day, Katsuki insists on training. Izuku is skeptical, but eventually decides that trying to stop him is probably a futile endeavor. He accompanies him instead. He brings a book with him and watches Katsuki out the corner of his eye as he makes his way around the gym, and then moves on to the punching bag. Trains in silence for a couple of hours. Izuku doesn't realize he's zoned out until Katsuki calls him name. Deku. Come look at this. He's standing by the knife section, his hand hovering over a pair of long blades that are built more like swords than knives. Katsuki holds one up with a grin. Fight me. Izuku frowns, but a part of him is thrilled at the prospect of getting to use a sword again. It's been a while. Are you sure you've recovered enough for that? You afraid of losing, shitty Deku? Izuku sighs dramatically and puts his book down. Is that a challenge? Something sparks in Katsuki's eyes. They take the swords to more open ground and settle into defensive positions. Izuku tests the sword's weight in his hand, enjoying the way it balances. He's never formally learned to fight with a sword, but you tend to pick up skills when you live for as long as he has, and he's always found he has a natural affinity for things like this. He's curious as how good Katsuki will be at this. Something tells him not to underestimate him. They lock eyes and leap at each other, swords colliding with a harsh clang. Katsuki twists his wrist and tries to slash at Izuku's shoulder, but Izuku knocks his sword aside with the tip of his own and retaliates with his own jab at Katsuki's throat. They fight like one being, moving their swords and dancing around each other's attacks fast enough that they look like a blur from the outside. Izuku quickly lets muscle memory take over. It feels good to let his instincts take control for a bit. He doesn't have to think about what he's doing. His body just moves. Katsuki is good. Really good. The fight lasts for a long time, maybe 10 minutes, because every time one of them gets closing to beating the other, their sword gets knocked aside and they jump back at each other with renewed vigor. It ends eventually, with Izuku pinning Katsuki to the floor with one knee and pressing the tip of his sword to Katsuki's throat with a feral grin. Even though Katsuki's obviously beaten, it feels more like an impasse than a win. They're both panting heavily, practically gasping for air, but Izuku's face is glowing, and Katsuki has a brilliant expression that matches Izuku's. Where did you learn to fight like that? Izuku asks in between breaths, pulling his sword away from Katsuki's neck and collapsing to the ground next to him. You're asking me that? What the F dash, Deku? Izuku laughs. It's just something I've picked up. Katsuki turns his head to stare at him. You're fing insane. What the F dashed it? Izuku blushes. He's not really used to being complimented like this, especially not by Katsuki of all people, but it's nice. That's the only reason he's blushing. The only reason. They fight a few more rounds, but none of them last as long as the first. They're both exhausted by the end. Izuku faintly registers Kirishima appear in the corner of his vision at some point, watching them with his jaw practically on the floor, but he's so focused on fighting that he forgets he's there almost instantly after noticing, and when he next turns to look, Kirishima has wandered off again. He thinks Nizu might also have turned up to watch them for a bit, but it might have just been a figment of his imagination. By the time he and Katsuki have gone back to their rooms and showered, Izuku's ravenous. The two of them head straight down to the dining room, where a meal is waiting for them. Kirishima and Kaminari are already down there. Kirishima's face lights up when they walk in. Dude, I was just telling Kami about you two fighting earlier. That was insane. Where did you learn to fight like that? Katsuki scoffs. We're just that effing good. Izuku doesn't miss the we in that statement. Will one of you spar with us sometime? Kirishima asks. We could totally learn from you. Katsuki looks like he's about to refuse, so Izuku butts in. Of course. I'd love to. He decides to spare Katsuki from being forced into it, although he's sure he'll end up tagging along either way. They spend their evening chatting with the other two, and Katsuki seems to enjoy it, even though he pretends adamantly that he's hating every second. It's late by the time they go to bed. They're both woken up early the next morning by a knock on each of their respective doors. One of Nizu's runners lets them know that they're wanted in his office in 10 minutes. Izuku hears Katsuki grumble about it, but they're both ready and in Nizu's office in time. Nizu eyes both of them. I apologize for waking you both up so early, but I'm afraid this can't wait. We've been contacted about a hostage situation in the West and asked to send someone in to get the hostage out. I volunteered you too. Izuku frowns. If civilians are involved, they need to get in there quickly. He knows Katsuki's thinking the same thing. I trust you to be able to pull this off, but the stakes are higher now than what you've done before. Someone's life is on the line. I know you won't let us down. His final statement sounds inappropriately bright, given the context. Izuku and Katsuki both nod tersely and leave the office. They get ready to leave quickly. Izuku's hand hovers over the rucksack as he wonders if it will weigh him down, but he eventually decides that having a first aid kit on him will be worth it if one of them gets injured. They're on a plane within the hour and off again in another hour. It's a short flight, only across the country. Izuku's nerves are eating away at his insides. His instincts are screaming at him that something doesn't feel right about this. The location is another warehouse, built from rusted metal and rotting wood. They hear a distant bang from inside the walls. Izuku feels sick. He doesn't know if it's from anxiety or something else entirely. They make their way to a side door, making solemn eye contact before pushing it open and slipping inside. The inside of the warehouse is in pitch darkness, but as they step in, the lights power on with a broken whirring noise. Izuku's breath catches in his throat. The warehouse is completely empty, a gaping husk of metal, apart from a chair right in the center with the limp body of a woman tied to it with rope. She's dead, Izuku murmurs, his heart sinking. Katsuki clenches his fists. They walk over to the chair. Izuku can feel something watching them. Every bone in his body is thrashing at him to get out, but he knows he owes it to this woman to find out what happened. He didn't get there quick enough to save her. A voice echoes from behind him that makes his blood curl. Painfully. Whoa. What a pleasant surprise, Tamura Shigaraki drawls. He looks exactly the same as he did 400 years ago, bone-white hair and vicious smile playing with his mouth. His lips curl further upward when Izuku turns to him. Izuku, I told you we'd meet again, didn't I? Katsuki's head snaps to Izuku. Deku? What is he talking about? It doesn't matter. Izuku is completely frozen, the hammering of his heart in his chest blocking out all other sounds. His nails dig into his palms. He fights against the huge part of him that wants to spin around and run very, very far away. Shigaraki chuckles coldly. Oh dear. You haven't told him, have you, Izuku? Told me what? Deku? What the F is he talking about? Izuku's breaths come in ragged gasps. I thought you'd gone. I thought you'd left. Why you here? Why now? Shigaraki laughs again. I didn't go anywhere. I've just been waiting. Waiting and waiting, but I think it's going to be time soon. Time for what? What are you planning? What are you going to do? Izuku snarls, his thoughts clouded by fear and anger. Shigaraki ignores him and turns back to Katsuki. There's a lot he's hiding from you, Katsuki. I wouldn't be so trusting if I were you. Izuku doesn't wait to hear anymore. He doesn't even think, he just runs, his feet carrying him out the door. He doesn't know where he's going, just away. He vaguely registers Katsuki behind him. Shigaraki's laugh follows him for a long time. Izuku only stops running when it finally disappears into the air, fighting off the panic that still grips him viciously. He's in an alley off some high street he doesn't recognize. The sound of cars and people in the distance calms him. Katsuki rounds the corner, pausing to gasp for breath and locking eyes with Izuku. He looks angry. Izuku takes a hesitant step back. He walks up to Izuku, grabbing the front of his shirt roughly and shoving him against the wall. Deku, he snarls, his voice low. You better tell me what the F that freak meant, right the F now. Izuku closes his eyes for a moment, wishing to be anywhere but here. It doesn't change anything. His silence is enough. Katsuki growls. You are hiding something. He was right. He was FNG right. Somehow. Izuku tries to say something, anything, to fill the silence. I met him once, Kaken, but it was a long time ago. I didn't think I'd ever see him again dash. He's cut off by Katsuki pushing him harder into the wall. What are you hiding, Deku? Why won't you effing tell me? Izuku breaks. Tears roll down his face. I can't tell you. I'm sorry. I can't. Why not? What is it? Katsuki presses urgently. Some of his anger seems to have dissipated, but he still keeps Izuku in place. Izuku remembers the shackles and the cell. He remembers the farmer. He remembers the way that scared little girl had looked at him when he ran off. He remembers the pure, burning hatred of every single person that's ever ignored him or hurt him or condemned him. He can't tell Katsuki. He can't lose him. He can't. I can't tell you. You have to trust me. It's for a good reason, I swear. Katsuki says nothing. His expression is clouded with something Izuku can't identify. Izuku puts his hand hesitantly on Katsuki's cheek, brushing his thumb gently over the skin. He wonders if he's going too far. Katsuki doesn't throw him off. You have to trust me, Izuku pleads, his voice hoarse and desperate. Please. For one awful moment, Izuku thinks it's not enough, but then Katsuki's hand loosens from where it's still curled tightly in the center of Izuku's shirt. He lowers his gaze, all the anger gone as quickly as it appeared. Izuku releases a shuddering breath he didn't know he was holding. Neither of them back away from each other. Katsuki puts his hand over Izuku's where it's still resting on his cheek. You better be right about this, Deku, Katsuki whispers. Izuku nods with more confidence than he feels. After he meets Shigaraki, Izuku works harder and harder on getting stronger. He uses his power as much as he can. He exhausts himself doing it, but he doesn't care. He has to get better. He does improve over the years. He improves a great deal. But it's not enough. It's never enough. He almost drives himself to death. He heals everything he finds. When something is too much for him, he does it again and again until it isn't too much anymore. He still can't bring a human back from the dead. It's the one thing that's never been possible for him. He tries so hard. It never works. And still the whole time he's lonely. Everything hurts. He's barely holding himself together. It's a sad excuse for a life. He ends up in dark rooms and dingy bars, hoping desperately that someone will find him and pull him out. He lets faceless men kiss him in the corners and alleyways and call him pretty. He reaches blindly for connection and always comes up empty. People always push him away when the bar closes and the lights come up. Nobody ever stays. Nobody ever wants him to stay. Time passes in a haze. He comes across a group of raucous men one night, completely drunk and this close to smashing the tables. He watches in amusement from the corner. They ignore him. Then his eyes slide around the room and come to rest on someone else, sat at another corner table just like him and making themselves look as small as possible. It's a boy in his late teens. He bears a resemblance to one of the drunk men, but his hair is two colors, split perfectly in the middle. It makes Izuku giggle. How strange it is. He hasn't laughed in a while. He goes over to the boy and holds out his hand. I'm Izuku. The boy looks startled and confused, but he shakes Izuku's hand reluctantly. Todoroki, he murmurs. I like your hair, Izuku says, and the ghost of a smile appears on Todoroki's face. The two become fast friends. Izuku goes back to the bar every few days, and whenever Todoroki's father, as Izuku discovers the man to be, is there, so is he. He's quiet by nature, but he isn't shy. He's fierce in his views and he cares a lot about people. Izuku likes him very much. One day, Todoroki grabs his hand and drags him out the bar. What about your dad? Izuku asks. He's drunk off his but right now. He won't notice. Izuku has to admit that he's sort of right. He takes Izuku to his house. It's big and grand, with plush red carpets and separate bedrooms for every resident. Todoroki doesn't talk about his father much, but it's clear that he's very rich. Todoroki's two siblings are there when they arrive, and they greet Izuku politely. Seem nice. Todoroki leads him up to his bedroom. The bed is a four-poster with ornate carvings in the bedposts. The two of them collapse heavily onto it and go to sleep, their arms wrapped around each other. They wake up in the same position, and they don't move until noon. Izuku thinks Todoroki needs the physical contact just as much as he does. It doesn't last. Todoroki's father finds out about Izuku's existence one day. He doesn't take it well. He talks about reputation and sin and the law. Izuku has never really had a reputation to be bothered about before, and he's never concerned himself much with the law either, so he doesn't really understand what the man means. Todoroki gets thrown out of his house. He cries into Izuku's shoulder. Izuku tries to apologize and comfort him, but Todoroki just smiles at him sadly and says that it was bound to happen eventually anyway. Izuku doesn't have anywhere for them to live. He can survive fine out in the cold, but Todoroki is just a normal human. Izuku's biggest regret will always be letting himself forget this. He leaves for one day to find food for them. The street isn't really safe when you're young and alone, but they have no other option. They need to eat. When he gets back, Todoroki doesn't turn up at the place they agreed to meet at. Izuku waits for an hour. Nobody shows. He knows something is wrong. He finds Todoroki in an alley. His shirt is stained with blood. His head lies at an awkward angle. The place reeks of petty thugs. He's dead. Izuku screams. He pours every last ounce of energy he has into waking Todoroki up, but it isn't enough. He puts even more in. He gives energy he can't really spare. It's not enough. Todoroki doesn't wake up. The glow of life inside him that had been so bright is gone. Izuku cries next to him. He pleads and screams. What does he have this stupid power for if he can't save the only person who cares about him? It doesn't do anything. Todoroki is dead. Izuku wonders how many more times he can go through this before it kills him. Then his adrenaline fades, and he passes out next to Todoroki's body. They have to break the news to Nizu that the hostage was already dead when they found her. He isn't angry. He just sighs like he expected it. Izuku, I understand the culprit is familiar to you. Izuku waits for the anger, the accusations, but they never come. Instead, Nizu looks at him tiredly. Is there anything you can tell us about him? Anything at all that might help us apprehend him? Izuku falters for a moment. He wasn't expecting Nizu to be so okay with him being acquainted with such a person, but he's glad. He's happy to share as much information as he can, although it's not much, and none of it is good news. His name is Tamura Shigaraki. He kills people because it's fun. He could beat any one of us in a fight, and he could beat all of us at once too. If you see him, you run away. If you're not dead by the time you escape, it's because he wants something from you. Nothing more. Nizu sighs again. I thought as much. He plasters a bright grin on his face. But no matter. I have faith. I'm sure things will turn out fine. Izuku doesn't believe him. Katsuki stays unusually quiet beside him, right up until they get back to their rooms. Izuku goes to shut his door behind him, about to call Aizawa to fill him in on everything, but Katsuki's hand stops it from clicking shut, and he follows Izuku in. He inhales. I know you said you can't tell me your FING secret, or whatever. But can you not at least explain how you even know who this guy is? Izuku doesn't really want to, but he thinks he owes Katsuki that much, at least. He sits down on the edge of his bed. Katsuki sits next to him. I met him, a few years ago, Izuku says hesitantly. Already off to a great start, he thinks drily, wishing he didn't have to lie. Well, he found me. He asked me to join him. Wanted me to follow him around like a little puppy learning how to kill, I imagine. I said no, of course, he adds hurriedly. But he said we'd meet again eventually, and left me alone. I thought he'd gone for good, but apparently not. Katsuki remains in thoughtful silence while Izuku talks, but moves to lean against Izuku when he's done, like he's trying to make up for the verbal comfort he can't find a way to give. Katsuki hums contemplatively. I didn't mean to get angry at you. It's okay, Izuku responds, resting his head on Katsuki's shoulder. I know why you did. They stay like that for a while. Katsuki eventually gets up and goes back to his own room. Izuku falls asleep curled into himself. He dreams of Todoroki. He remembers that feeling of inescapable helplessness. He remembers Todoroki's limp body in his arms. He remembers the blood staining his shirt. He remembers the comfort of having a warm body next to his while he slept. He wakes up gasping for air, his heart hammering in his chest at twice its usual speed. Something's wrong. He can feel it. His mind is screaming at him to get up, to protect himself, to run. Everything seems quiet. He doesn't know what's wrong. The world is completely still, but he knows, viscerally, that something is about to happen. He fights to control his breathing. Panic won't help him now. He needs to figure out what's going on. Then an explosion shakes the frame of his bed, the floor caves in, and the walls crumble in on themselves. The ceiling collapses. Izuku shifts before he can even think about what he's doing, wriggling out from under a piece of rubble. His door is still intact, just about. He pushes it open with human hands and stumbles out into the corridor. his mind is racing, but he can only think about one thing. Kaken. Izuku forces Katsuki's door open and pushes inside, trying not to breathe in too much dust. Katsuki is bent over on the floor, coughing hoarsely, but he looks uninjured. His head snaps up as Izuku enters. Deku, are you okay? What the F is happening? Relief washes over him at the sound of Katsuki's voice. I don't know, he gasps. But we need to get out of here before the whole building collapses. Katsuki staggers to his feet, and immediately has to jump out the way of a chunk of falling brick. Yeah, he grimaces. They don't run into anyone else on their way out, but Izuku would know if anyone had died in the explosion. Everyone's still alive. For now, his mind supplies in a moment of pessimism, and he mentally slaps himself. Right now, they need to focus on themselves. The stairs at the back of the building are mostly undamaged, but the ground beneath them shudders again as a wall falls in on itself somewhere nearby. They move faster, taking the steps 2 at a time. Eventually, they stumble out onto the grass, shaken but unharmed. Izuku turns back around. The house is a mess. An entire section of the center has been blown to bits, and the rooms surrounding it are broken and caving in on themselves. The air is thick with dust thrown into the air by the impact of the collapsed walls. The rubble is piled up like a pyre in the center of the building. Izuku guesses that must have been where the explosion went off. He hears footsteps approaching. Kirishima runs towards him, shouting his and Katsuki's names. Izuku grins. Kirishima, you're okay? I'm all right, Kirishima says, but then his face drops. But Kami is trapped under rubble. He isn't hurt, but he can't get out. I've tried calling for help, but there's no signal. Izuku's phone is buried somewhere under all the bricks, but Katsuki gets out his own phone and tries to dial the emergency services. He taps the screen a few times, but then growls in frustration. It's gone for me too. Someone must have disabled it. It confirms what Izuku was already thinking. This isn't an accident. Someone's trying to isolate them. He and Katsuki glance at each other. It seems like Katsuki is thinking the same thing. Izuku turns back to Kirishima. Is there any way you can get him out? Move some of the rubble? I think I can, but it'll take a while. He told me to go and check that everyone else was okay first, Kirishima says with a bittersweet laugh. Suddenly, there's a crash from inside the building. The rubble on the peak of the pile trembles, and some of it rolls down. Then the cloud of dust parts, and Shigaraki emerges on top of the rubble, dirty air curling around him. The sun is almost rising, and the faint light silhouettes him like some kind of twisted messiah. Shigaraki, Izuku breathes. He turns back to Kirishima. Go and get Kaminari out. Kirishima looks conflicted, but Izuku practically shouts at him. Go! He nods at them and runs off. Katsuki clenches his fists and starts back towards the house where Shigaraki is still hovering. I'll effing kill him. Izuku grabs his shoulder, stopping him before he can go any further. Kaken, he'll kill you. Stay away. Please. Katsuki looks like he's about to retort, but then Shigaraki jumps down from his makeshift podium and shouts Izuku's name. Izuku knows he can't run away from this anymore. He walks forward until Shigaraki sees him. Deku, you hypocrite, Katsuki hisses, but Izuku ignores him. Katsuki places himself in front of him, blocking his path. You can't seriously be thinking about this. If he's as dangerous as you say, he'll just effing kill you too. Izuku pushes past him. This is my fight. I have to do this. Please leave. You'll just get hurt. You cannot expect me to just effing leave you here with this psychopath. Katsuki's eyes are fiercely defiant. He's beautiful, Izuku thinks. He can't force Katsuki to leave. He knows that. Still, it scares him when he feels Katsuki following close behind him as he approaches Shigaraki. He can almost see Todoroki's body sprawled on the floor next to him, taunting him, reminding him of just how mortal Katsuki is. He tilts his face to look Shigaraki in the eyes. Why me? Why now? He tries to fill his voice with conviction, but he thinks he just sounds tired. Shigaraki laughs painfully. Why you? Why you? You're so naive. So young, despite everything. The world never forced you to grow up, did it? Izuku's heart constricts. Whatever you think you know about me, it's wrong. Of course I had to grow up quickly. You of all people must understand that. Shigaraki tightens his fingers into a fist, and tendrils of black energy curl around his hand. Izuku hears Katsuki's faint gasp beside him. Oh, Izuku. Ever since I became like this, the world has hated me. I tried so hard to be nice, and it gave me nothing except pain. But you, with your perfect little powers and heroic cause. His smile drops. His eyes are ruthless, bloodthirsty. It makes me sick. The world gave up on me before I even knew who I was. You ask what I want? I want revenge. Suddenly, Izuku gets it. Of course he gets it. How could he not? No matter what Shigaraki seems to think, Izuku understands his pain better than anyone else. Shigaraki is hurting, just like Izuku was. Just like he still is. He has to make him understand. Tears start to roll down his cheeks, but he makes no attempt to stop them. He steps closer to Shigaraki, ignoring Katsuki hissing his name warningly. I've suffered too, of course I have. The power you have doesn't make any difference. He takes another step. I saved a life and woke up in HNDFFS. Another. Katsuki's eyes widen almost imperceptibly. Don't you get it? It doesn't matter what makes you different. People hate you because you're different in the first place. He's practically face to face with Shigaraki now. Katsuki is frozen in place a few paces behind him. Something flashes in Shigaraki's eyes, something too brief to identify, but then his expression hardens again, and Izuku knows he's made a mistake. He grabs Izuku's shoulder, twists him around into a headlock, and plunges a knife concealed in his palm into Izuku's stomach. Katsuki cries out his name. Blood pools in Izuku's throat, and he jiges. He thinks distantly that getting stabbed doesn't hurt as much as he thought it would. Cold numbness creeps through his body. His brain begs him to shift. He forces the feeling down. Shigaraki lowers his mouth to Izuku's ear. Show him. Show him the part of you that always drives people away. Show him everything that's wrong with you. Izuku shakes his head as vigorously as he can manage. He won't. He won't lose Katsuki as well. Show him, Izuku. No, he gasps, desperately fighting the animal inside him. Shigaraki grasps the hilt of the knife and twists. Pain explodes where the metal connects with Izuku's body. He screams, "Show him!" Izuku locks eyes with Katsuki. Both of their faces are streaming with tears. "I'm sorry," Izuku mouths at him and gives in to his mind. Shigaraki loses his grip on him as Izuku's form changes, the knife tearing out of his skin. The wound is bad, really bad, but it's already beginning to heal now that the knife is out. It's enough, at least, for Izuku to be able to stay on his feet. "Izuku!" Katsuki whispers tentatively. Izuku meets his eyes for a moment, his heart breaking. Shigaraki laughs. He's always laughing. Izuku is this close to tearing him apart, but the grotesque smirk on Shigaraki's face stops him in his tracks. "Oh no," Shigaraki drawls. "I'm not done yet." He twirls the knife he just pulled out of Izuku in his hand and pulls his arm back. Izuku realizes what's about to happen just before it does, and he throws himself at Shigaraki, teeth sinking into his throat before he can process what he's doing. Shigaraki dies instantly, his face still painted in that smile. Izuku's body erupts in blinding pain, even worse than before. His brain does nothing to numb it this time. He feels like he's being slowly torn apart, cell by cell. He's never killed before. He wonders if this was worth it. Shigaraki's body remains smiling, as if this is exactly what he wanted all along. The pain subsides. He hears a choked gasp from behind him, and he spins around. His heart stops. Katsuki's face is pale, even more so than when Izuku had half carried, half dragged him to the hospital. His right hand is curled around the hilt of Shigaraki's knife, protruding from just to the side of his sternum, right over his heart. For the second time since they met, Izuku watches Katsuki crumple to the ground. He feels the pain of Katsuki's death in his own heart. He ignores it. He finds Todoroki's body, blood-stained and broken, in an alley somewhere in the city. He's dead. Izuku throws himself to his knees beside Katsuki's body, his hands pulling the knife out of Katsuki's chest. Kaken! Kaken, you have to wake up. Katsuki doesn't move. Please, wake up. Please. Wake up, Kaken. You have to wake up. You have to. Izuku hears himself screaming, but he hardly feels it. He pulls on every last shred of energy he has inside his body and begs for it to give Todoroki life again. Desperation tears him apart. He searches frantically inside himself for something, anything that can bring Katsuki back. It's not enough. What does he have this stupid power for if he can't save the only person who cares about him? His limbs, his muscles, the still open knife wound, are screaming at him to stop, but he doesn't care. He won't let go of Katsuki. Not like this, he thinks. Not again. I won't let him die. I won't. The thought becomes solid in his mind. I won't let him die. He knows it's true as he thinks it. It's a fact of the world, as certain as the knowledge that the planet will go on spinning. Katsuki Bakugo will not die today. Light streams from Izuku's hands where they rest on Katsuki's chest. It splits into 1,000 tiny tendrils, dancing and twisting and curling around the two of them. It's mesmerizing. Izuku still just stares at Katsuki's motionless face. Izuku feels his own energy emptying rapidly, but he doesn't cut the connection. He won't cut it until Katsuki is breathing again. Katsuki still doesn't move. It isn't enough. Izuku keeps pouring energy in, even as he feels it begin to drain on his own life force. He doesn't care how much it takes. He would give it all 1,000 times over for this. He feels dizzy. The world spins and tilts and flips. Blood still pours from the wound in his stomach where Shigaraki drove the knife into him. He still doesn't break the connection. Everything goes black. Izuku grows up in a little town in the country. The houses are small and pretty, with thatched roofs and little wooden doors. Everyone knows everyone. Life is tough, but people are happy here. His mother is a kind woman named Aiko, with green hair just like his. She hugs him and laughs with him and cooks his favorite meals and tries her best to make him happy. She does make him happy. Izuku's best friend is a boy with blonde hair and red eyes. His name is Katsuki, and Izuku thinks he's the most amazing person in the world. Katsuki wants to be a soldier when he gets older. Izuku says he does too, but only because it's what Katsuki wants. Really, he wants something different. His neighbor is a man called Toshinori Yagi. He's selfless and genuine, and the one everybody goes to for help. He can use magic, beautiful magic that dances through his fingers when he commands it to. When I grow up, Izuku thinks assuredly, I want to be like Mr. Yagi. Teach me. 6-year-old Izuku begs Toshinori for the millionth time. Katsuki scoffs next to him. Why do you want to learn that stuff, nerd? Swords are way cooler. Of course, Kaken, Izuku lies. But I want to learn anyway. Katsuki rolls his eyes. Toshinori chuckles. Maybe when you're older, he says to both of them. Izuku is too young to notice Toshinori's lingering glance in his direction. At least show us something cool. Please. Toshinori sighs and rummages around in a drawer on the other side of the room. He retrieves a single seed and holds it in his palm where both boys can see. Tendrils of light curl around his hand, and the seed blooms into a tiny red flower. He tucks it behind Izuku's ear, and Izuku giggles. Hey! Katsuki protests. Not fair, I want one too. He pouts dramatically. But Kaken, I thought you said this wasn't cool. Izuku teases, laughing again. Katsuki scowls and shoves a hand in his face playfully. Shut up, Dad. I only said swords are way cooler. Izuku keeps that flowers for years. Every time it wilts, he knocks sheepishly on the door of the house next to his and asks for it to be fixed. Toshinori obliges every time. Everything in Izuku's life shifts and changes around him, but he still keeps up the habit of keeping the flower alive. Once, when Izuku is about 16 years old, it's the other way around, and Toshinori is the one knocking on Izuku's door. His mother answers, greeting him happily as she moves aside and offers Toshinori a drink. Thank you, he says, sitting down at the dining table. But I actually need to talk to Izuku. Is he around? Inko sticks her head outside and calls his name, and he comes running in, his face painted in a bright smile which gets wider when he notices the guest. Mr. Yagi. Toshinori laughs. Hello, my boy. I wondered if I could have a word with you about something important. Izuku gives him a confused look, but takes a seat opposite him. Inko leaves the room to give them some privacy. Toshinori inhales deeply. He may as well get straight to the point. The magic I do cannot be taught. Izuku's smile falters, but Toshinori continues before he can say anything. But it can be given. Izuku freezes. Hope blooms in his chest. I would like, if you want, for you to be my apprentice. Izuku launches himself at the man, wrapping his arms around him and hugging him tightly. Toshinori laughs and pats Izuku's shoulder. Awkwardly. Yes. Izuku says. Yes, of course. He doesn't tell Katsuki at first. He knows he should, and his heart constricts every time they train together and Katsuki talks about the two of them becoming soldiers. He doesn't know how to break it to him. He doesn't know how to say that he's not following that path. It doesn't help, really, that recently, their friendship hasn't really been what it used to be. There are soft smiles, lingering touches. They fall asleep curled up next to each other more often than not. Izuku is so scared to lose it. He knows the truth will get between them. It comes out, eventually. Izuku can't hold it in anymore. It hurts him too much to keep lying to his best friend. Katsuki is talking about how unstoppable they'll be, the strongest duo, the best fighters around. He just seems so set on it. Mr. Yagi asked me to be his apprentice. Katsuki glances briefly back at him. I said yes. Katsuki stops. He turns to Izuku slowly. What? He asks. Izuku holds back tears. I'm not going with you. There's a pause, silent and tense. Hurt flashes briefly across Katsuki's face, but as quickly as it appears it's replaced by anger, and Katsuki explodes. What the F do you mean? You've been lying to me this whole effing time? The tears flow freely now. I didn't know how to tell you, he says. He asked me a few months ago and I was so scared to tell you about it. I thought we're in this together, Katsuki growls, and the wobble in his voice betrays his hurt. I can't even believe you, Deku. He walks off. Izuku doesn't follow. He wishes he could fix this the way Toshinori fixes his flower every time it dies. When he walks in the door, Inko immediately asks him what's wrong. I told him, he murmurs and her face falls. Oh, Izuku, she says, wrapping her arms around him. Katsuki cares about you more than anything. He'll come around. As Izuku lies awake on his bed, he desperately hopes she's right. He wakes to the smell of smoke. His eyes are stinging and he coughs violently. He stumbles downstairs, searching for his mother. He doesn't find her, and pulls open the door, hoping she's already escaped the house and is waiting for him outside. She isn't there. Toshinori's house is a blackened mess, the walls half gone and the interior open to the world. It looks like the fire started there and spread over to Izuku's house next door. Every building in his vision is burning. It's like some sort of sick light show. Toshinori stands in front of his doorway, facing a strange man. The man is cloaked, his face concealed by a dark hood, but his hands are pale and covered in scars. He says something to Toshinori that Izuku is too far away to hear. He has to find his mother. They have to get away from here. He takes a deep breath and runs back into his house. He finds her, trapped behind a fallen beam of wood. With his help, she manages to free herself. More material falls from the burning ceiling above them, right where she had just been standing. The smoke is getting even thicker, and he can hardly breathe. He grabs her hand and they scramble their way out as fast as they can. When they make it to the end of the path that Izuku had taken to get to Inko, he freezes. It's blocked now. Flames lick the underside of a fallen bookshelf, trapping them inside. The ceiling above them is partially caved in and balancing precariously on the section of the shelf that flames are quickly eating through. If they don't get out soon, it will collapse on them. Through the space above the bookshelf, Izuku can see Toshinori, hunched over and breathing fitfully. The stranger Izuku had seen 5 minutes earlier is not in sight. He shouts for him, and Toshinori looks up, horror flashing over his face. Behind him, Izuku's mother coughs. Izuku! Toshinori runs over, wincing in pain. Now that he's closer, Izuku can see that he's wounded. His whole side is slick with blood. He doesn't look good. The ceiling above them groans painfully. Toshinori tries to pull some of the smaller pieces of wood out the way, but his injury is bad. He gives a strangled cry and doubles over. When he coughs harshly, there's blood. The damaged wood groans again, and something snaps. Toshinori looks back at Izuku with wide eyes. The burning ceiling trembles and falls. Izuku thinks he blacks out. When his eyes open again, his ears are ringing and his head is throbbing. Everything hurts. It's hot, so hot. He becomes aware of something pulling on his arms, and he feels his body shift and move. Cool air hits his face. He's on the ground. Toshinori kneels next to him. He looks scared. What is he scared about? Izuku is fine. He can't feel much, not now that everything is numb, but he's okay. He just wants to go to sleep for a bit. His eyes start to close. Stay awake, please, Toshinori pleads, but he sounds so far away that Izuku can barely make out what he's saying. Light burns from behind his eyelids, and he forces his eyes open. He's surrounded by a soft glow, like 1,000 fireflies hovering around him. It's beautiful. He wishes he could freeze time, just to look at it a bit longer. Toshinori's hands rest over Izuku's heart. The light collects itself into a little ball, small and bright. Then it explodes into a starfall, and Izuku's body absorbs it. It feels warm and comforting, like his mother's cooking. He just wants to fall asleep for a moment. He lets himself slip into unconsciousness. Katsuki finds him half an hour later, after a frantic search. Izuku's heart isn't beating. The last conversation they had was a stupid argument. When he looks at Izuku's body, it feels like half his world died with him. Toshinori Yagi lies next to him, pale and bloody. His heart is just as still as Izuku's. Rain puts the fires out eventually. The town is completely destroyed. The flames had spread everywhere, catching on every building, and they had more than enough time to burn everything to the ground before the rain extinguished them. Katsuki returns as soon as it's safe to pull Inko's body out of the ruins too. When he gets there, Izuku's body is gone. He assumes an animal must have taken it. It makes him sick, and it's just another hurt on top of everything else. He can't even bury his best friend. He also finds the body of a stranger, his black cloak in tatters. Katsuki leaves him where he is. He buries Inko and Toshinori, though, and he engraves a stone for each of them and Izuku. He makes it look as nice as he can. He leaves a red flower on Izuku's stone, just like the one Toshinori had given him as a gift. He leaves the area and never comes back after that. He only lives half a life and dies younger than most, and the memory of Izuku follows him every single day. The next thing Izuku knows, he's waking up in a forest thousands of miles from home. Izuku gasps and sits up, dragging breath after painful breath into his lungs. He's still on the ground at the country house. Nothing has changed. Except everything has changed, because he remembers. He remembers it all. Every laugh, every tear, every person. The memories that slipped out of his reach for so long have finally stayed in his grasp. He finally knows who he is. Deku. Katsuki's voice is quiet and hoarse, but it's there. He's speaking. He's moving. He's breathing. He's alive. He's alive. Izuku can't help the laugh that escapes his lips. Katsuki pulls himself upright, hissing in pain as he moves. You died in the fire. Why are we here? He sounds dazed, disorientated. He isn't talking about what just happened with Shigaraki. He's talking about the dream. Izuku never cut the connection between them. He passed out before Katsuki woke up. He didn't break it. He can feel it now, running quietly at the base of his mind. It's present, but it's tame, restrained. He can faintly feel foreign thoughts and emotions on the other side. You saw it as well, didn't you? Izuku asks quietly. I saw us as kids. I saw you dead, Katsuki says in a low voice. How much do you remember? From before Shigaraki. He trails off, putting a hand next to the half-healed wound over Katsuki's heart. Katsuki meets his eyes slowly. Everything. Izuku's stomach drops, and he goes to move away from Katsuki, his breath's getting shorter. You're probably terrified of me now. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, I'm so sorry dash. Katsuki grabs his hands, cutting him off. Deku, he says. I don't care. At Izuku's look of shock, he sighs. I don't FNG care that you didn't tell me. We have time. Tell me now. So Izuku takes a deep breath and tells him all of it. He talks about waking up, not knowing where or who he was. He talks about meeting Achiko, and meeting Todoroki, and meeting Aizawa. He talks about running away from Shigaraki, and working himself to death to get stronger. He even talks, haltingly, about standing on the edge of a cliff and wishing the fall would kill him. When he finishes, crying and sort of breathless, Katsuki pulls him into a tight hug. Izuku sobs into his shoulder. Katsuki asks him why they're both here now, when he knows he lived a whole life before. I think, Izuku starts hesitantly, his voice muffled by Katsuki's clothes. I think the world wanted to give us a second chance. Katsuki hugs him tighter. Then Izuku pulls back slightly and tells Katsuki about his power and about the connection between the two of them that he didn't have time to break. Katsuki listens quietly until Izuku is done explaining, but before he can say anything, Izuku opens his mouth again. I might be able to break it. I don't know. I don't know what it means for you if I don't. Deku. I don't want it to tie you to me, because then you'd be stuck with me and you wouldn't die dash. Deku. And I know people think that's a good thing, but I wouldn't wish it on anyone, so really I should try and cut it right now because dash. Izuku. Katsuki takes Izuku's face in his hands and kisses him. Izuku's breath hitches, and he relaxes in Katsuki's grasp, his eyes sliding shut. He snakes his arms around Katsuki's neck, pulling him closer and pressing their bodies together as he deepens the kiss. The care, the desperation, the want leaves Izuku breathless. The world falls away around them. Keep it, Katsuki whispers, pulling back just enough that his lips still brush lightly over Izuku's as he speaks. What? Izuku replies. Katsuki rolls his eyes. The FNG bond, Deku. I want to keep it. What? Izuku says again, his eyes wide. Do you really need me to say it? Katsuki laughs softly. It's so unlike how he normally is, how he acts around everyone else. It's almost jarring. Almost. Izuku just wants to kiss him again. I want to stay with you, Katsuki murmurs. For as long as I have to. He reaches for Izuku's hand and joins their fingers together. I want to stay with you until the world crumbles around us. He presses his lips to Izuku's again, gentle and so full of purpose. His red eyes are brimming with raw emotion. Izuku feels it too, deep and visceral, both from himself and through the bond. He knows his own eyes must be practically glowing yellow right now. He's happy. He's so happy. It's an alien feeling. He hopes it never goes away. As much he wants to stay in this moment forever, Izuku breaks away eventually, panting and dazed. We need to help the others, he says. None of them are dead. They might be trapped. Katsuki nods, and they both pull themselves to their feet. Izuku shifts, just because he can, turning to Katsuki as a fox and delighting in the way Katsuki's eyes widen just a little in awe. He crouches down to meet Izuku's eyes. It's FNG amazing. You're amazing. Izuku rests his head on Katsuki's knee for a moment, letting his breathing slow down to match Katsuki's. Then he lifts his head to the air, filtering through all the sensory input to find the people still inside the house. 4 by the dining room. 3 in the staff quarters. 6 in the kitchens. Kaminari and Kirishima are still by Kaminari's room, where Izuku guesses Kaminari was trapped. Izuku can smell blood but no fear. Everyone is still alive, and more or less okay. Izuku picks his way across the ground towards the people closest to them. Katsuki follows behind him. They manage to get everyone out safely. By the time they get to Kaminari, Kirishima has managed to free him and the two of them are sitting back to back on the grass together, breathing heavily. Then Izuku takes Katsuki's phone and flies straight in one direction until it registers a signal again. He calls Aizawa. The man picks up after only 1 ring. But Kugu. He sounds stressed. Izuku can't help the smile that comes when he hears Aizawa's voice. It's Izuku. Izuku. I've been trying to get hold of you for hours. What the F happened? Aizawa doesn't swear very often. He must have been really worried about them. It's a long story. I'll explain everything in person. Right now all you need to know is that the base is now a huge pile of rubble and everyone is safe and alive. Aizawa exhales on the other end of the phone. That's good. A few people are injured, but it's nothing fatal. Our signal was cut off, so I'm far out of the way right now, but I need to get back. Can you send transport for us? Of course, Aizawa says and then pauses. Do me a favor and don't scare me like that again. I was worried about you, problem child. No idea why. Ah, there it is, Izuku laughs. I was concerned you'd gone soft on me. Soft on you? Never. You're a pain in my butt. Yeah, he replies, giggling. Sleek black government cars arrive in a long train not 15 minutes after Izuku gets back. A woman in a neatly pressed suit climbs out the front car, and Nizu exchanges some quiet words with her before they get back into the taxi together. Everyone else follows suit, filling up each car in the line of vehicles. The drivers take them to the train station. Nizu hands Izuku and Katsuki a train ticket each and thanks them for their work. I'm sure we'll work together again sometime. Nizu says, slightly unnervingly. Izuku still wants to poke him. They both fall asleep on the train. The journey doesn't feel so slow to Izuku this time, with the warmth of Katsuki's body next to his. The gentle movement of the train carriage is strangely calming. Maybe trains aren't so bad after all, he thinks. Another taxi is waiting for them when their train pulls into its destination. Aizawa leans casually against the car door, staring at Izuku and Katsuki's linked hands with one eyebrow raised. Looks like you do have a lot to tell me, he drawls. Izuku blushes. Izuku tells him everything in the taxi ride. Katsuki interjects occasionally to add things. When he finishes explaining, Aizawa exhales deeply. Dimmed, he says, and it's just such a perfect reaction that Izuku can't help but burst out laughing. Katsuki looks at him like he's gone crazy, but a small smile tugs at his lips as well. They drive past the agency offices, but they don't stop. Izuku looks at Aizawa with confusion. Aizawa just smiles. They eventually pull up outside Izuku's flat. It's such a simple gesture, but Izuku's had an emotional few days. He immediately bursts into tears. Katsuki snorts and puts an arm around him. He means thank you, he says to Aizawa, mimicking the way Izuku talked to Kirishima before. Izuku shoves him, but there's no real anger behind it. The program they were on is discontinued, of course. Kirishima and Kaminari had done a great job, but Izuku and Katsuki had sort of been more disruptive than anything, although Katsuki adamantly denies this when Aizawa drily explains it to them. Also, the program can't really operate anymore when the base is a pile of rocks. With his degree abandoned and his training program interrupted, Katsuki doesn't really have anywhere to go. Izuku assumed it was kind of a given that he'd come and stay with him in his flat, either way. Aizawa hires Katsuki officially just like he did for Izuku, even though he never formally completed his training. The two of them are sort of a package deal now anyway. The first thing Aizawa does once the two of them are settled back in is grant them 2 months of leave. He acts all dramatic about it and pretends like they left him no choice, just to keep up appearances, but it's a kind gesture and it doesn't go unappreciated. The first place Izuku and Katsuki go is the site where the 3 engraved stones still lie. They're a historical relic now or something, 1,000 years old and swarmed by archaeologists. The hill isn't open to the public, but they're practically secret agents, so they sneak in easily enough. I don't remember engraving these, Katsuki says. But I know I did. Isn't it weird? Izuku replies. There's been more than one of you. Doesn't that make you feel strange? Of course it does, Katsuki says, and then pauses for a moment. But I'm the better version. Obviously. Of course, Izuku giggles, leaning into Katsuki's side. It feels like closure standing there. Like everything can finally be put to bed. The dreams have stopped, since the day Katsuki almost died. Well, apart from once. First, he finds a boy with hair that's 2 colors. You kept going, Todoroki says with a tiny smile. Yes, Izuku says, knowing it was hard. Next, he finds a kind man with blonde hair. I'm so proud of you, Izuku, Toshinori says, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder. You're a better guardian and a better person than anyone else could be. Was it worth it? Yes, Izuku says, and he means it. Finally, he finds a brown-haired girl. You found him, Achiko whispers. She looks proud. Yes, says Izuku. I did. She kisses his cheek just like she did that day on the hill, but this time, she doesn't walk off. She just sits with him, keeping him company until he wakes up. Izuku and Katsuki head down the hill together, and they don't look back. They get coffee at the visitor gift shop down the road. By the time they're finished, the sun is beginning to set. They stand on the pavement and watch as the moon rises. Katsuki nudges Izuku's shoulder playfully. So, we have 2 months. Where are we going first? Katsuki asks. Izuku grins. How about Amsterdam?